Okay. Barada Pau, good morning all, and welcome to the Planning Committee meeting being held at 9:30 AM on Wednesday, the 9th of March 2022. We've got quite a busy agenda this morning, so we'll go through a few of the regular rules and things like that, just so we're all clear, so we can have a good proper debate about things and come to the correct conclusions. So first of all, we will start with apologies. Okay, I have apologies from Councillors Peter Evans and Councillor Melvin Mile. Do we have any other apologies from members of the committee? If you just unmute now and let me know. Okay, so that's that. Then we'll go through declarations of interest. So I'll just hand you over to our legal officer, Tim Dillon.
Deal. Thank you, Chair. Barada, good morning, members. Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now, or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it is a personal interest or a personal interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the meeting for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any votes. If a personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available from the committee support staff. Moving forward, and it's relevant for declaration of interest, some members may have played a part in previous discussions and decision making in relation to the land relating to item number 5. Those members need to be satisfied that they can approach that particular application today with an open mind. If they feel they cannot approach the item with an open mind, then the members need to consider making an appropriate declaration and consider playing no part in the decision making for that particular item. Diolch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've got a couple of hands up. Cynghorydd LLYS.
Just personal expression of interest with item GWYN, BRYN, GOODMAN. It's just that majority of those who have objected to this application are known to me. So, but it's nothing more than personal interest.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill.
Thank you, Chair. It was just in relation to the item that Tim referred to at the beginning in terms of item 5. I just could do with some advice with regards to that one. Obviously, I'm the lead member for property. This is was a Denbighshire piece of land, and I obviously proposed the sale for housing. So would that be deemed to be prejudicial or just personal or what? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for raising that, Councillor. I think ultimately it's obviously your consideration, your decision. I suppose my advice would be that to be safe and in the interest of transparency and fairness, that really you should play no part in that particular item. Thank you, and make the appropriate declarations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. With that advice, that'll be the course of action I will take then. Thank you.
Okay, so just to fully clarify, that's a personal and prejudicial view, and so you won't take any part in agenda item 5. Okay, so if you just go out into the waiting room, or Rhodri will put you in the waiting room for that. Okay, Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, could the legal officer expand on that a little bit, because obviously you've got 2 cabinet members on this meeting. who took part in that particular debate that Councillor Thompson-Hill's referred to. Where does he see that seat sitting legally this morning?
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, obviously your role as cabinet members is slightly different from Julian Thompson-Hill's role as on the property, lead member property. So got any additional advice?
Thank you. I suppose it's ultimately, you know, if it's deemed to be a prejudicial interest, then it's ultimately how that's perceived by the world, by the outside world, by the public. Really, there is probably a view, a legal view, that you know you need to be careful on that, really. And consider making the appropriate declarations. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, if I can come back on that, then sitting here in sunny RHYL, I took part in the cabinet debate about the matter as it was that day. This is now a planning matter debate. So are they therefore divorced? And I'm sitting here with an open mind on this item number 5 this morning. Then.
Yeah, ultimately, Councillor, if you feel that you can approach that particular item with an open mind, as I said before, when I set that out, then that's fine. If however you feel that you can't approach that with an open mind, then obviously I advise you to consider, you know, playing no part in that item. But if you feel that you've got an open mind with it, and you've declared that now that you feel that you have an open mind, then obviously that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. I'll declare that now then. And then, Chair, moving on swiftly down to item 9, I'd like to declare a personal interest. Just over 2 years ago, I was involved. I was asked by residents, sorry, not involved, contacted by residents about what was happening in the area around this application at number 9 today. And I did deal with some residents' concerns via the police until I was told by the local member, Councillor Prendergast, to sort of, for want of other words, to keep my nose out of it. So I did, through no fault of my own, I was approached and I was involved in conversations at that time. And indeed, I did sit in a cafe one morning in Vale Road when the applicants were actually there, but nothing was discussed about this application this morning because it was over 2 years ago. So if I just say personal on that, I should be clear.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Young.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just item 5. Obviously, I was in the same debate with other cabinet members, but I declared a personal, but I've certainly got an open mind. And I've read the papers, and today will be my view on that from an open mind.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so just I forgot to mention it for those that are public speakers. You will be put into the waiting room if it's not your item. So anything other than item 5, if you're on agenda item 6 or agenda item 9, if you're a public speaker for that, you will just be put in the waiting room. Again, it's just so I can see more people on screen for that. Okay, so just so you are aware of that. And you will have 3 minutes to address the committee when it's the appropriate time, which we will come on to later. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 3, which is urgent matters as agreed by the chair. I don't have any. Agenda item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting. So that is to confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 9th of February 2022. And the copy is attached, and that obviously starts on page 9. So as always, if we can, if there's anything on any page that I go through or any item that I go through, just unmute and speak. Don't need to put your hand up for these ones. Okay, so page 9 we've got, and then we've got page 10, which was application numbers or agenda item numbers 5 and 6. Page 11 was agenda item 7. And also on page 12, and then page 12 and 13 were agenda item 8. And then page 13 and 14 were just the additional item. Okay, so if nobody has any comments on those, could somebody please propose that they are a true and accurate record of the meeting from the 9th of February? Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think it's Councillor Bob Murray and Councillor Ellie Chard. So proposed by Councillor Bob Murray, seconded by Councillor Ellie Chard. And again, if there's no dissenting voices on that.
Could I just come in, Mr. Chairman? Councillor Merrick Davis. Yeah. Thank you very much. Just to thank the clerks for amending the last minutes, and just draw attention to what I said at the committee on site. Thank you very much. Number 4 in the minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, unless there's any dissenting voices, we will accept that they are true and accurate records. We'll just give you a couple of seconds to unmute if anyone has any comments on those. No, okay, marvelous. All right, so we're moving into the agenda items. Just again, a couple of things. We've obviously had the late sheets as an email from Judith Williams last night. So make sure you've all got that on your email. There is quite a lot of information on a few of the items. You'll also see the running order of the day. As you know, the running order is quite often altered based on the fact of whether there are public speakers or not. As you can see, the running order is going to go 5, 6, 9, 7, 8. Because of the public speakers on that. Okay, so without further ado, we will get into agenda item number 5. So if Ms. Julian Thompson Hill just, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so it is on page 15 of our reports. The ward is Denbigh Upper and Henllan. The ward member, there is a slight, there's an omission of one of the councillors there. It's ward members. It should be Councillor Glenn Swingler and Councillor Garrett Williams. Application number is 01/2021/0950/PF. The proposal is the erection of 110 dwellings, construction of a new vehicular access, landscaping and associated works. The location is land adjacent to YSGOL PENDREF, GWAENYNOG Road, Denbigh. We do have public speakers on this. So as is always the case, we do the public speaker against will go first, and you will have 3 minutes to address the committee. We are quite strict on the 3 minutes, so if you could make sure that you set a stopwatch or something, because you will be stopped after 3 minutes. This is both for the for and against speakers to keep it fair. So whenever you start speaking, then we will start the timer. So I think the first speaker is Helga Viswanathan. So whenever you are ready, who's the objector? So whenever you're ready, you can address the committee.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay, go for it.
This field is part of a working farm. The Welsh Government's agricultural land classification map shows this field to be graded 3A, and so is considered best and most versatile land. Planning policy Wales states that such land is
Can you just, sorry, can you just stop? We're having a little bit of a problem. It's coming through a bit clunky. Not sure quite why.
I don't know. Should we try now then? Can you hear me any better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can I start from the beginning?
Yes. I haven't started the stopwatch yet. So yeah,
Okay.
start from the beginning.
Thank you. This field is part of a working farm. The Welsh Government's agricultural land classification map shows this field to be grade 3A, and so is considered best and most versatile land. Planning policy Wales states that such land is a finite resource that should be conserved for the future and only be developed if there is an overriding need. Developing this field for a further 110 houses cannot be considered as overriding need when 550 plus houses are already planned to be built in Denbigh alone. This is a large proportion of the recommended total for the whole of the county. The climate emergency, Brexit and war in Europe all bring uncertainties of future food supplies from overseas. And therefore retaining our farmland is now more important than ever. In 2019, DCC declared a climate emergency. The council's own green policy states that all decisions must be made with the climate crisis and the environment in mind. Developing greenfield sites like this releases tons of carbon stored deep within the soil, directly contributing to climate change. This is totally at odds with DCC's declaration. It was recently reported that the UK only has 52% of its biodiversity left, and destroying our fields and hedgerows adds massively to its decline. The Environment Wales Act 2016 requires that public authorities must seek to maintain and enhance biodiversity, and in doing so promote the resilience of ecosystems, while the biodiversity net gain states that any development must leave the natural environment in a measurably better state. The measure set out in the developers' proposals of providing bird and bat boxes and planting saplings, which take decades to mature, will in no way mitigate the loss of the established wildlife habitat and the biodiversity on this 7-acre site. Road safety will be affected as the entrance to this development would be situated on a sharp bend that already has 2 additional junctions, while GWYNYNOG Road and Launch Llewellyn will struggle to cope with the large increase in the vehicles using them. 110 houses equates to at least 300 cars on this site alone. In combination with the North Wales Hospital site, we would potentially see over 1,000 extra vehicles, all converging in Lenton Pool, which already sees significant congestion. The extra traffic will lead to an increase in air and noise pollution and will have a detrimental effect on the health and well-being of existing residents, and particularly the school directly adjacent to the site. All planned developments combined will increase the population in Denbigh by thousands. This will put enormous strain on local doctors, dentists and other services who already have limited capacity, while job availability is also limited. The majority of houses coming to Denbigh, including the proposed developments, will be situated in one small ward, one of the most deprived in Wales. Consequently, few local people will benefit as the cost of the houses is far beyond the reach of the very people that are reported to need them. This is not about local need. Further objections include the destruction of ancient hedgerows, documentary evidence of which you have already been sent, flood risk, loss of amenity, loss of privacy, and the negative effect on the Welsh language, all of which are described in greater detail in my original plan and objection, which I hope has been read by all members. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we have a public speaker 4, which is Stuart Andrew, agent. So whenever you're ready, Mr. Andrew, you can address the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. My name is Stuart Andrew. I am the Design and Planning Director of Castle Green Homes, and we're the applicant of this proposal. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you briefly this morning in support of our application for the construction of 110 dwellings at land off GWAENYNOG Road in Denbigh. The site is one that was owned by Denbighshire County Council and is allocated for residential development in your current local development plan. The council have previously produced a formal development brief for the site in March 2017 and have marketed the site for sale on this basis. So to be clear, this is a site that was owned by the council, and the principle of housing here has been agreed by the council prior to the marketing of this land to us as an allocated housing site. Castle Green Homes has submitted a planning application for this scheme that is entirely policy compliant, and more than that, offers double the usual council requirement for affordable housing, 20% rather than 10%. This is 22 affordable homes that will be provided to Denbighshire County Council yourselves for disposal to local residents on the council's housing needs register. So this is absolutely about local need. Also, significant financial contributions of over £160,000 are already agreed that will help fund road and footpath improvements around YSGOL PENDREF and new play facilities on the nearby Caerhule Park. Obviously, some local objections have been received, generally based on concerns regarding the principle of development here and infrastructure at this location. However, as I've already pointed out, the principle of development has already been agreed as being appropriate here by the council, and that agreement has been in place for several years. There are no objections to our proposals by any council officers or any specialist consultees. It is the view of the professionals employed by the council, NRW, CPAT, Welsh Water and several others, including the county ecologist, that there is absolutely no technical reason for you to refuse this application. Agricultural land issues aren't a consideration as the site is allocated. So while I appreciate you may be aware of a limited degree of local negativity concerning the delivery of this allocated housing site, I would ask you to consider whether around the time of a local election you would instead prefer to see questions asked in the press and elsewhere as to whether it was appropriate for you to not approve a site that was allocated for housing for several years and is well supported by your officers, one that represents a £2 million plus land receipt to the council and hence local taxpayers, and one that, if refused, will inevitably then won by ourselves at appeal, with the council then having to pay several tens of thousands of pounds of wasted Denbighshire Council taxpayers' money in unnecessary costs. This can, of course, be avoided today if you, ladies and gentlemen, agree with the recommendation of your officers in your report, which states that this proposal is entirely acceptable in terms of its principles and design, and that hence planning permission should be granted. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay. So just before we go into the debate, I know there's going to be a number of people that want to speak on this, and just to go into our you know, our protocols that we have in planning committee, just so we are aware. Okay, as a member, okay, you can speak for 5 minutes, but you should try to only speak once. Obviously, sometimes you have to come back on a question and things, but what we don't want today is people speaking and then speaking again and then putting their hand up again and things. Okay, that's not on any. I'm not saying that to stifle any debate. I'm saying that because that's what it should be on every single planning application. Okay, we should try to speak once for a maximum of 5 minutes. And obviously try not to repeat anything that anyone else has said. I know there's going to be lots of people that want to speak on this, and I'm happy to have as much debate as possible, but we don't want to be repeating ourselves because we've got to get to the correct decision. And we're just going to bring in Paul Mead first, and then we'll go to the fact that there was a site visit and get a bit of information for that, then the local members, and then open it up. So Paul Mead first.
Diolch yn fawr, Chair. Bore da, good morning, members. It was just very briefly, just to let members know that there are a number of officers on this meeting as well with you today from a sort of technical and strategic perspective. So, as usual, myself and Paul Griffin are here from the development management side, but because some of the issues raised in some of the items today have got more of a strategic housing and planning policy theme to them, we do have Angela Loftus, Lara Griffiths, Jane Abbott, and there's a number of others as well. So it was just to warn members that we might be flitting in between other officers and not just hearing myself and Paul Griffin's voice this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, the highways officer cannot be here because of well, details, just personal details. So apologies for that. Okay, this site was subject. Can
I just?
Yes, Gwyneth.
Sorry, Cadeirydd. Could I just ask Paul if the county ecologist is present?
No, they're not.
I think that's a shame.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So this site was subject to a site inspection panel meeting at 10:15 on Friday, the 4th of March. Unfortunately, I was not present, but Councillor Christine Marston, as Vice Chair, was there. And obviously the local member, one of the local members, and a few other members were there. So does anyone, if you don't want to come in on you know, in the actual debate itself, but you just want to talk about the site meeting, then if you want to come in, I can see Councillor Christine Marston. Do you want to come in now?
Thank you, Chair. Well, yeah, we had the site visit to establish the setting and character of the area, access onto the proposed site, the potential impact on the surrounding residents and infrastructure, drainage implications and traffic flow. We did walk the site. We appreciated that there was a lot of local feeling and that many local residents were there respectfully expressing their concerns. So I think it was a very good site visit. It took advantage of where the site is, the position and relationship to Denbigh as a whole. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Scott. Again, just keeping it totally on the site visit for now.
Thank you, Chair. I'll turn my video off because sometimes you lose what I'm saying on this computer. Yeah, visited the site. First impression, our first thing I saw was the hedge that had been removed already, which I thought was a bit silly because we've not even got to planning yet, but the hedge had gone. A big, large, open countryside field with a grade 3A status. Again, whether we should be building, I don't know. I think Denbighshire has enough houses as it stands now. They've nearly got all of Denbigshire's allocation. It's probably an old LDP site that was added when the Welsh Government said we needed more back in 2000 time. And I think the footpath needed some sorting out. There was one, I didn't want to mention this, but I will. There was one unsavoury incident when there was a group of protesters, and as I was walking back to my car, one said to another, where I'm certain I could overhear, that you can't talk to these people, they're all boneheads and they're only doing it for backhanders. Well, I don't know, but me or any other members, but I go on a site visit to ascertain the facts, listen to planning officers and local members, and then return to planning committee to relay these facts, debate the issues, and then give an informed decision based on all the information. I was very disappointed that some or one member of the public thought I or any other members of the planning committee were boneheads and only do this for backhanders. Very disappointed with that. Having said that, Chair, I would like to propose that this recommendation is refused. Sorry.
just on the site visit.
Sorry, okay, then I shall wait till later time then. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mark Young, just on the
Yeah,
site.
I'll just do a couple ones. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for officers for attending on the day. And thanks to the peaceful protest, they were a credit to their community with their passion. Apart from what Peter said, one person, overall, they were passionate and professional, which is more than can be said for the developers, workers who turned up to rip the hedge out before planning today. I am concerned on highways issues, which I'll raise later. It's a bad bend. It's very hilly coming down towards the proposed site on your left, but I'll raise that later, Chair. But I thought it was a really good site visit. So thank you.
Thank you. Cynghorydd Rhys Thomas on the site visit.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Yes,
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes.
a very good site visit. I was pleased that local residents are interested in this. It doesn't always happen, but thank you for all turning out to that one. One thing that did strike me on the site visit that hasn't been said before is how high this site is. It's almost looking down on Denbigh Castle, and it was the first time I realized the effect that this would have on the skyline, the very beautiful skyline of Denbigh. You look up at Denbigh from the Vale of Clwyd and you see the castle. If this development goes ahead, you will have an additional thing to look at other than the castle. I was quite surprised at the altitude that we were at there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so there is some info on the late sheets. As you can see, there's some late representations. We've obviously had a few emails and things which will cover that. There's a little bit from Denbigh Town Council. There are some suggested revised conditions on ecology, drainage and footpaths as well, just on the first few pages there. And there's some officers' notes on the hedgerow as well. So as we go into the debate, again, if we try as far as possible to restrict this thing, remember we are in a planning committee meeting and we are debating whether this should have planning permission for 110 houses. So if we feel that it should, then we obviously would be thinking of the planning reasons. If we feel that it shouldn't, then we should be thinking about the material planning considerations as to whether this should be granted planning permission or not. And it's always difficult when it was a council site and we've got these corporate policies and all those kinds of things. But if we restrict it to the planning conditions, that would be wonderful. So I'll bring in the local member first if they want to come in, which I can see. I know Councillor Glenn Swingler, you are on the meeting, so you have the right to speak first as local member.
Good morning. Thank you all very much. Thank you to everybody that attended that site meeting and members of the public who almost entirely were respectful and showed their objections. I didn't hear what was said, so that's very sad to hear. But anyway, let's go on. Let's start with the hedgerow that was cut down on the last day of February, so they didn't have to come along on the 1st of March with an order to cut it down, or even if they could get one. I'm disappointed that our ecology officer isn't here today, because he said that the hedgerow is not ancient and has no is not important. However, Cheshire Ecological Services, who were employed by Castle Green to do a report, said the site was generally of low ecological value, with the exception of the species-rich hedgerow, H2, which has the potential to qualify as important under the wildlife and landscape criteria of the Hedgerow Regulations 1997. A section of this hedgerow is proposed to be removed to facilitate this development. Well, effectively, it's already been removed before it's even got to planning. However, once this hedgerow was removed, what we saw behind it, or in amongst the hedgerow, is there is a wall. Now, this is a dry stone wall from what I can see, and has the possibility of being the previous town boundary. Now, I have no idea. I can only guess, but I think that requires further investigation, as well as it may have architectural and historical importance. Hampshire County Council have declared climate change and ecological emergency, and it is a corporate plan priority for the environment. How can this excessive house building on green land fit with that? I'll come to more of that. As has been mentioned, this is graded agricultural land. It was put into the LDP in 2012, the 2012 LDP, which is now out of date. And was the fact that this was graded land missed in that original development, in that original plan? We can come to traffic mitigation as well. As has been mentioned already, there are 350 homes being built on the North Wales Hospital site, and there are these 110 being built up by YSGOL PENDREF on the road leading out of Denbigh. All this traffic will have to go down towards Smithfield Road and down onto Lenton Pool, which is already a very congested junction, especially during the peak periods. This traffic, that's 350, 450, 470 houses in just these two developments. That's probably over 1,000 extra cars that will end up going down Vale Street, which is already the third most polluted street in Denbighshire. I'm not quite sure how this fits in with the well-being of the community. Now, the LDP said that 3,200 homes plus contingency are needed over a 10-year period. This is from 2018. If you take everything that's been built since 2018, plus granted planning consent, it works out Denbighshire needs around 800 homes through the whole county over this period of time. There has already been nearly this amount built and planned in Denbigh alone, in just Denbigh. The field has been mentioned by Councillor Rees-Thomas, is high ground. The hedge is very big and very deep, but the ground is very high up. These houses will stand out way above the skyline. And for those that went on the site visit and for those in the planning committee, you've seen the photographs of the kind of views that you get from there. And this will be, of course, a big detriment. From the CONWYN Denbighshire Local Wellbeing Plan 2018 to 2023, having a healthy and resilient natural environment is essential to deliver maximum environmental, economic, cultural and health benefits for the communities of CONWYN Denbighshire. We need to stop looking at the natural environment in traditional ways in silo and understand its fundamental importance in delivering wider benefits to society. You will see that there have been numerous objections to this from, firstly from Denbigh Town Council who are objecting to it, also from two Senedd, local Senedd members as well. I could go on about so much. Yeah, we have, if the traffic, for example, doesn't go along the top road down Smithfield Road to Lenton Pool, it's going to go down past the school. Those that were on the site visit can see that that is already being altered to make it safer for the children to cross the road during school times and for also whilst playing on Kye-Howe fields. So there is a lot of work going on down there to make it safe. Now, traffic cannot guarantee that the traffic will not go down that way to get out of Denbigh via Hentland Street. So we are going to, whichever way the traffic goes, it's all ultimately going to end up going down Vale Street, or the vast majority of it, as that's the main route out of Denbigh.
Glenn, you're at about 6 minutes, so if you could.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just say that I urge you to reject this on so many grounds. I'm extremely disappointed that Castle Green went and cut back that hedge as they did one day before the cut-off date. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm sure if you haven't raised anything, others will probably raise any other points. Councillor Peter Scott, I can see your hands up.
Yeah, is that stop my video again, Chair? Is that the debate started now? Because as I said, what I said on the site visit, and I agree totally with everything that Glenn said. He was there. I listened to his talk that day. And because of that, I would like to, as I said before, I was going to say, I would like to propose that this recommendation is refused on the grounds of its over-intensification, building an open countryside on grade 3A farming land. And that's me, Chair. Thank you.
Chair, can I come in there just before I second that, please?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Peter. So I just want to talk, so Peter's talked about his bit, and I want Peter to consider also the highways issues, because as I say, after being on site, I'm not very happy with the proposed layout. So I know the developer says it's in the LDP, but it's our job as elected members to be happy with the proposals. So if you look in the documents, the highways officers have confirmed that there's a financial payment towards active travel and highway safety of £25,000. Now, I just tested that from the documents of North Wales Hospital, which is a few fields away. They're paying hundreds of thousands to improvements and to active travel. So one's paying roughly £3,000 of property towards and stay, and 100.
Turn your video.
If the developer wasn't paying for it, we'd have a roundabout here. And I know we have to deal with what we've got, but if people who know this area, if you're coming down from Nantglyn towards the site and the sharp bend, with the amount of junctions on that sharp bend, and it's on a hill, the best way of managing that, I believe, is a roundabout. And I just want for the minutes, Chair, if I may, and then I'll leave it there. Planning Policy Wales, edition 11, February 2021, the most up-to-date, 4.43, says planning authorities must seek to reduce the level of speed of traffic in and around new developments, including the streets in the area must be designed moving forward to be 20 miles an hour or less, it says in that document. Now, clearly a roundabout would make that happen. So I would like, if Peter's happy, to add the highways issues on the lack of financial contribution, and I don't believe what's before us is safe enough for this development. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think so that's been proposed and seconded. Obviously, there's going to be more debate. I think there's two overriding issues or reasons there. I think obviously we can fill out those reasons as the debate continues, but they're obviously roughly just as a guide for now on what Peter said was the over-intensification of the land. It's the 3A agricultural land, the best and most versatile, and not being necessary to being used. Because there is sufficient homes already within the Denbigh area. But again, we can fill this out. And then reason 2 marks obviously about the highways infrastructure and about the community benefits to that. So we can continue the debate, and then we can see how those reasons will actually be written correctly or in more precisely in future. Councillor Rhys-Thomas.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Planning Committee, for allowing me to speak on this. If I'm only allowed one opportunity, Chair, then I have just one overriding point of principle and maybe a number of minor points which I'm sure that members of the Planning Committee will come to. First of all, can I just point out that the Council for Protection of Rural Wales did lodge an objection to this, as did Denbigh Town Council, and decided to object unanimously to this. Unfortunately, later on, when there was a reconsultation response, it's down as Denbigh Town Council not making another response. So that's because the unanimous response to oppose this still stands. Okay, I'll go on to a few of the minor points I had, which I'm sure that Planning Committee will have a look at. On page 37 of the report, it talks about affordable housing is distributed through the development, but it does not meet the sizes set out in Beautiful Homes and Spaces standard. So there are things which I think Planning Committee need to ask about on that. 110 houses with no open space. Okay, I know that there's a commuted sum, but that's a disappointment, and no education requirement. Now, we found out with other developments here in Denbigh that even though that is stated at the beginning of this process, that turns out not always to be correct. So I'd like members to bear that in mind, please. Whilst I've just mentioned the affordable homes there, could members please ask officers what are the average salaries in Denbigh and certainly in this ward? It would be interesting for me to see whether anybody living or the average person living in this ward is able to afford even the affordable homes. So I'm sure that there are officers present who will be able to talk about the mean incomes in the area. The density of housing, page 52. I think whoever wrote this has a sense of humor. You need to have a sense of humor with some of these long documents. 35 dwellings per hectare is set out in policy RD1. However, it says that the density of housing is above 35 dwellings per hectare, as is meant to be in the policy. However, as this reflects the surrounding development patterns, then it is not unacceptable. So you can overcrowd a housing development, providing that the surrounding developments are also overcrowded, is my interpretation of that. And it then goes on to say on page 35, and I paraphrase it, the overcrowded development would respect the character of the area. So if you have too many houses over 35 per hectare, it's okay to build them then if it reflects other overcrowded areas. Anyway, those are my minor points, and I'm sure that planning committee members will look at them. My main point, and I will be very brief, Chair, as a member of the strategic planning group, there are quite a few of us here today. One of the references I'm using today is the LDP annual monitoring report, and I'm just going to quote 2 paragraphs from this with thank you for your patience, Chair. The first one says that Welsh Government confirms that plans adopted prior to 2016 will remain the LDP for determining planning applications until replaced by a further LDP. We understand that. Denbighshire County Council will therefore be able to continue applying local policy that is set out in the LDP in 2022, this year. We must be aware of updated national policy and listen to this end of the paragraph, and place greater emphasis on new evidence. And what is being presented to you is new evidence. There was no idea back in 2014 or 16 or whenever this was, that there would be almost 330 houses being built less than half a mile away. And that, as we've heard already, there are many housing developments have happened in Denbigh since then. My second quote from this document is, and I quote now, there has been a significant rise in housing completions in recent years, the majority of which have been on sites specifically allocated for housing in the LDP. The completion rates are still below the 500 per annum as was set out in the LDP, but subsequent household growth projections have demonstrated that the growth anticipated when the LDP was prepared has not materialized. So members, please give careful consideration to the fact that the LDP, the present LDP, came to an end in 2018. We're in a taper period. In that period, a developer could ask to build on land that's not in the LDP, and they'd have a good chance of doing it because the LDP now is tapering and has less importance. In the same way, the land that was already in the LDP, we had to take more recent evidence and the taper affects that as well. So even though it was in the LDP, which came to an end in 2018, it's still continuing because there isn't a new one in place. And so new evidence has to be taken. And part of the new evidence is that the growth in households has not been what was projected back 10 or 12 years ago. So thank you for your patience, Chair, and I'm going to enjoy listening to the debate. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, Cynghorydd Gwyneth Censler.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, thank you.
Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to compliment the residents and people who've written in their everything that they have written is of very high standard. Secondly, I would like to register my unhappiness, even complaint, at the perceived threats made by Stuart Andrews on behalf of the developer that if we went to appeal, etc., etc. I perceive that as a threat, and I apologise to Peter, and it made me think of when I was coming out of a wind farm application, planning application. A member of the public said within my hearing, these Welsh people don't deserve to live in Wales. I've lived with that ever since. I am very sorry that the ecologist is not here, because this is an integral part of the application, and I would like to know what steps can be taken to prosecute the vandalism that has been done already regarding this hedge. And we have been sent photographic evidence of that it's a historic hedge. It's unfortunate we have our hands tied, so we can't use highways as a reason, because the council officers have no objections. What I am going to say, and Rhys has already said it, if new evidence comes to light, and I'm going to give as material considerations for opposing this application. One is climate change, that we have included in our constitution, and we must make sure that we're just not paying lip service to it. So climate change is a material consideration. The other one is the war in Ukraine. Ukraine, known as the breadbasket of the world, or at least of Europe, and food security as a result of the war in Ukraine is going to take on far more importance. And I'm sure that the Welsh Government will consider that and perhaps adapt its farming policies. And the third reason, what is new, on the 19th of January, Councillor Rhys Thomas and I were at a presentation on the reorganisations of schools in Denbigh. We were the only local members there. I think it was the community Betsy Cadwallader Community Council that was there. I think that's the name, and Ellie Chard was certainly there.
I'm just,
yes.
You're fine to carry on, not at time or anything. Just with regards to schools, just be aware of what is in, before you say anything, just be aware of what's in the public domain and what's not in the public domain. And I know there's some information about schools that's not in the public domain, so I just don't want you to say anything that may be still confidential.
Right, well, there is a reorganisation going on and proposals are being made, and which would have an effect on this area. So those are my three reasons.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to bring in the officers now. So Paul Mead's going to come in first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's probably important to just pause at that point, because I think there was quite a lot in Councillor Thomas's speech there that we need to address. And as I've mentioned before, there are some other officers from our Strategic Housing and Planning Policy team. I know I can't see visuals, unfortunately, from my screen, but I am aware that Angela Loftus is here, and there are other officers from Angela's team that might want to come in on some of the points that Councillor Thomas had raised. I think fundamentally what I got down there in terms of Councillor Thomas's comments, there were something around the size and the requirements of the dwellings on the site, around education contributions and the current sort of capacities at school, average salaries in Denbighshire and in Denbigh, rather, in this particular ward in particular, and then a couple of comments really around the policy on 35 dwellings per hectare, and what the rationale is for potentially going above that in certain circumstances. So I'm going to pause now and hope that I may hear Angela's voice next. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, members. Hope everybody can hear me okay.
Yeah, good.
Hopefully it'll go okay. Yes, quite a lot of points raised there, so apologies if I miss anything, and I'm sure my colleagues can help out as well. Fundamentally, this site is allocated in the adopted local development plan, and there is also an approved site development brief for this site as well, so that was approved by the council in 2017. We had a ministerial letter in September 2020 clarifying that the current LDP remains in place. So although it has an end date of 2021, it does remain in place until we have a new LDP to replace it. So that is the basis for making decisions on planning applications at the moment. In terms of there being a number of references to numbers, housing numbers, just to clarify, there was some information presented by Councillor Swingler, which relates to some work that's been done in preparation for the replacement LDP. So there's been some figures produced for that and discussed by members. They have taken into account the figures that were mentioned were a residual requirement, looking at new population figures, a residual requirement of 833. That does take into account completions that have already happened, sites that are under construction and commitments, and it does also take into account a figure for the former North Wales Hospital in Denbigh. So that is included. So 833 is on top of those figures. So just to clarify on that. In terms of other queries raised, and I do apologise if I miss anything here because there were quite a lot of points raised, and I'm sure people can chip in if I do. There was a point raised about the average income in the area. I've had the information through that in that local area, the median income for households is £22,635 per annum. So that's the figure mentioned. There was also reference to open space and the lack of provision on the site. The site development brief, which I just referred to, which was adopted by the council, does allow for commuted sums here. It does allow for commuted sums to be made to the existing open space in the area. So that would be in line with that adopted site development brief. In terms of just checking other things, in terms of the sizes of affordable homes, I understand that the revised plans were submitted and they do also meet the Beautiful Homes and Spaces standards now in terms of those revised plans. Densities was mentioned as well, and policy RD1 in your adopted LDP. And that covers all sorts of things relating to sustainable development and design, the section of that refers to density does talk about making most efficient use of land by achieving densities of a minimum of 35 dwellings per hectare for residential development. So that's not a cap, that's a guide, and it's a minimum figure, and it's all about making best use of land. So that's the policy that's referred to. Anything else I've missed?
Education.
Okay, thank you, Lara. Yeah, I can come on back. We've had confirmation from education that the capacity of the current school is 180 pupils, and they've got 111 on the roll at the moment. So there is a considerable capacity there, and that they, you know, we have regular meetings with our education colleagues, so they're aware of developments coming forward, and that it would be built into their future plans for the site. Yeah, so that there is current capacity. And that's the best and most up-to-date information we've got on that. A couple of other points that were raised in terms of in 2012, when the site was put forward for inclusion in the LDP, I can confirm that the agricultural land classification was discussed and was noted at the time. That's in a report to council that went in December 2012, so that matter was considered at that time on that. Don't have anything else on that. I mean, in terms of the climate change emergency, yes, obviously that post-dates the LDP, but that was declared in July 2019. The site was put up for, went through cabinet and scrutiny and then back to cabinet with a resolution to sell it, but that wasn't until September 2020. So that, I would say, that decision was made in the context of the climate and ecological change emergency, and that would have been taken into account as part of the decision on that, and the site was then subsequently marketed on that basis.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got a few more speakers with hands up and things.
Yeah, just if I may,
can I come back, Chair, as I ask those questions?
Yep, very
Can I back to the replies, please?
Yep.
Briefly. We were, first of all, the education contribution. We were in exactly the same situation with another housing development in Denbigh. We had the same thing, plenty of school spaces, and yet further down the line, the developer had to cough up 74,000 because those figures had not been correct at the time that it came to planning committee. So I can already think of an exception to that one with school spaces. The other mention, which I wasn't going to do, is that this was passed by cabinet. Can I just remind members that the vote at cabinet was 4-4, that only half the cabinet, and it went through on the casting vote of the chair. So it wasn't an unanimous decision to sell this land in 2020. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so there's more members that want to speak, and again, just
Chair, just a point on the highways at the.
Yeah.
Officers are going to come back to that because it is the point I want to answer from officers, please.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Paul, do you want to come in on the highways one?
Yeah, I will. And again, apologies on behalf of Mike Parker. Unfortunately, his father's been taken into hospital, so he can't be here today. I think, unfortunately, all I can probably add to the debate in relation to highways is what's been said thus far and what's within your report. Obviously, it's an allocated site. It's a site that's had an adopted site development brief. The highway issues would have been examined in both of those instances. It's been examined for a third time now via our consultation with the Highway Authority, and the highway engineers have come back to outline that they've got no objection to it, notwithstanding Councillor Young's points there in relation to the potential improvements that could be made. We have to go with what's before us in terms of the plan and application that we have, and we've consulted with our highway engineers and they've come back with no objection. Thank you, Chair.
Just on that, and then I'll leave it, Chair. So the point I want to make is the site at North Wales Hospital has got over $500,000 of active travel funding applied for, and this has got 25,000. including upgrades on highways for safety. It doesn't sound reasonable and it doesn't compare. So I'll leave that there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I think we've just, I'm just going to come back on that, and obviously again we haven't got the highway engineers here, but I think we've got to be careful in relation to the funding on active travel and the contributions that are being made by developers on in relation to potential highway improvements. My understanding is that the active travel funding is applied for by the council to improve roads, and that's a fund that comes not from developers, it comes from central government in relation to the active travel. So there might be some funding that's coming for schemes elsewhere that would have been applied for by Denbighshire County Council, but we have to apply our standards in terms of highway contributions from developers. I think they're different things.
Okay, I will just once more, it doesn't say that in your documents today, Paul, but I will leave it there.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we've got a few more speakers again. If we can try to keep it to points that haven't been raised already, just so we're not going over ground, because it's going to be a bit of work to just get through the reasons and things like that in a little bit. So Councillor, I've got Cynghorau then Miss Wynn first.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll speak in Russian. Thank you all who have spoken so far, and I have a page of notes in front of me here, and Councillor Chris Thomas has covered most of them, so I'm going to concentrate on two things only, but I refer quickly to the education provision. We've been told that there's capacity, we have figures now just for 100, and that there's capacity for almost 70, I would say, at the school, at the local school. There's more than one school that services that part of Denbigh. There's also a Welsh medium school in Denbigh, and I know that a very large number travel from all parts of the town to reach that school. Are the figures available for Welsh medium education for residents who would move to this new estate should it receive planning permission? That's my first question. The second question, it's to do with active travel. Should the application be allowed, hopefully there'll be a priority for any walkers or cyclists who would be using these roads. Or is it a matter, but when you cross the junction, that there's obvious priority given to the person walking or the cyclist rather than people in cars. Same as the new highway code rules, which have now come out recently. So a few questions there for myself. Anew, hopefully, and I agree with much that I've heard already from previous speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, bringing officers in a bit. We've got a couple more speakers that we can go through first. I think Councillor Mervyn Parry.
Well, thanks, Chair. I'll just put my video off just so it's possibly so I'm not breaking up. Yeah, just a couple of things really. Again, I'm disappointed with the Highways report on this, that we don't ask or haven't asked the developers to make the entrance of this site safer. We have the ability to do that and we haven't done it. And, you know, just strengthening on maybe what Mark Young might have mentioned of having a roundabout there. We had the opportunity as Denbighshire to ask the developer to possibly do this. I don't understand why we don't do it. Can I then say, if this application is passed today, could I ask for a condition to be put in that the entrance is, safety of the entrance is done at the beginning of this development and not partway through or at the end, so that the entrance is done at the beginning of the development to make sure it's safe for people working off-site or on-site or passing or people walking by. And a question to, I'm not sure, somebody on the LDP or LARA possibly could answer this one, on the affordability of local housing. How do we take in the fact we might work on a wage, say, example, maybe 16,000 or 20,000, but how do we factor in the event of what's happening in the world now with the war in Ukraine and inflation, interest rates going up? When I bought my first house, we were at 17.5%. Now, if interest rate went up to 17.5%, your affordability changes drastically. And I just wonder how, when you do your affordability costs, you factor in the possibility of interest rates rising
or falling. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you. And I'll bring in Councillor Brian Jones did have his hand up.
It was up. Has it gone down? Is it?
Yeah. Anyway, go on, Brian. You come in, and then I'll bring in officers. After you.
The sixpence must have run out, Chair, and the hand's gone down. I have to put a sixpence in my machine to keep my hand up there. Yeah, I just want to say, disappointed as the lead member for climate change. The climate change reference in the pack is pretty minimal. I made a declaration the other week that the honeymoon for the Denbighshire climate change strategy and ecological matters is at an end, and this planning application does illustrate that. Going forward into the next council, the climate change needs to be taken more seriously. I'm serious about it. I have been serious about it. Other members and officers have been serious about it. But if you apply our climate change emergency strategy to this planning application, then there's a potential that the application falls, and the application, if it does fall and it goes to an independent appeal, the climate change strategy that we've got, and in particular the ecological aspects of that, will stand up to scrutiny. And in the next council, when the baton gets passed over, the climate change will rise to the top. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do officers want to come in on a few of those points?
Yeah, I'll start off again, Chair. Thank you very much. I hadn't forgotten also about Councillor Kensler's query before. I've just gone through my notes again there, and I think Councillor Kensler had raised that issue about potential prosecution in terms of the removal of the hedge. I think there's something in the blue sheets that covers that as well. So hopefully that deals with that. I think going back now to Councillor Emrys-Wynne, I think it would probably be relevant to maybe bring in Lara again, if I may, Lara, just in relation to the education contributions, and the capacity was raised there around potential Welsh medium school. And then I'll come back after that in terms of Councillor Wynne's point on active travel. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, members. I've actually just got a jabber into education, just asking them to confirm what the current capacity at Ysgol Twynant is. So I will get that back to you just as soon as she responds back to me. I can see she's typing at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine. Thank you, Lara. We'll probably move on to some of the other points that were raised there. I mean, again, I think in relation to active travel, again, my understanding of that process is that sort of Mike Jones and his team, with Ben Wilcox-Jones and others, they sort of set out quite a bit in advance in terms of what active travel routes might be required in a particular area, and they apply for funding to ensure that those active travel routes are delivered. I guess the facts in this instance are that this site has been on the horizon for quite a number of years in terms of the allocation, etc. So if there was any issues and there was any need to deliver active travel routes here, then Mike and his team would have certainly looked at that. Mike and his team, in terms of the application that we've got, have obviously looked at this proposal that's before you and have deemed the proposed highway implications acceptable. I can't really add anything more to that without those highway engineers being here. I think Councillor, just moving on to Councillor Mervyn Parry's point there, again, should this application be approved in accordance with officer recommendation? I'm having some doubts about that, but if it was, could we put a condition on relating to making the entrance safer? Well, I've just been informed by my colleague there, condition 16 should cover that in your suggested list of conditions. Again, I think that there was another question there from Councillor Parry that maybe Lara could come back on in relation to the affordability and interest rates and how that is calculated in terms of affordable dwellings. And then I'll come back at the very end on Councillor Brian Jones's points around climate change, if I may. So over to you again, Lara. Thank you.
Thank you again. Yes, I've had confirmation from education. The capacity of the school is 286 and they've got 267 currently on the roll. So there's capacity for additional 19 pupils at Ysgol Twynant currently. In terms of the affordability on the affordable housing things, I'm going to defer to my colleague Jane, who knows far more about these things than I do and could probably give you a much more rounded answer. So if I could bring Jane Abbott in on this, thank you.
Good morning, Chair. So it's just to say that with regards to affordability, things are calculated as per our affordable housing SPG, which is always related to the local income. And so that does take into account affordability with regards to Welsh Government guidance as well. So we calculate, for example, a 3-bedroom house is 3.3 times the local median income. However, I would point out that people don't tend to move just within a ward area. So you wouldn't have people moving from epidemic to epidemic. They might, move within Denbigh. So you've got different incomes there that come into play with Denbigh Central and Denbigh Lower. But also the affordable housing on this site isn't actually intended to be for sale, as I understand. I think the council's got first call on buying the properties which they want to bring into social housing stock. And also additionally, we have had interest from other RSLs that would like to buy some of the houses for their own housing stock in addition to anything that's brought forward in section 106. So it probably would be providing more than the 20% affordable. And these would be things like intermediate rents, so you would be having other types of accommodation and tenure there provided. I don't know if that assists.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so just going through the speakers, I will bring in Councillor Joan Butterfield next.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's just a question. I'm struggling with this. I've got to say, in favour of the officer's recommendation before the actual debate started. But looking at the issues in and around the density of the site, I'm getting really uncomfortable about it, and I wonder if someone can just answer just the question in that. Did we actually speak to the developers when they came to us with an application to develop the site on 110 houses, which there would be no green open space there, and which obviously would reduce down the quality of life straight away of any of the owners of any of the properties on there if we were neglecting the well-being of residents that would be living there. So I wonder, did we have did we negotiate? Did our planners negotiate with the developers, or did the developers come with 110 as an option? And we didn't ask them to reduce down the housing provision there. And looking at our G1, which covers development and design and density, and it is only a guide, did we not actually push and what was the outcome of that? Or did we just say, yes, we just accept that 110 houses would be a suitable number for that site? I'm struggling with that, Chair. I find that really would be something that I couldn't vote for if. So I do need an answer to that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll bring in Paul Mead on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just in respect of that, yeah, obviously planning officers do have close discussions with developers on any proposals. There's a sort of pre-application process that needs to go through, and developers will amend their schemes accordingly, having regard to feedback that they get from a number of sources, really, including planning officers, highway officers, etc. I think the issue that was raised there by Councillor Butterfield goes back to an answer that was given by Lara before, or by Angela, in relation to what the policy in the site development brief has said here. It's a question over density versus the most efficient use of land that's allocated in your plan. And I think here is a classic example of where a developer's tried to get the right balance between providing contributions in terms of open space, but making the best use of available land that's allocated within the plan, as opposed to, as I think has been mentioned before, somebody just picking a random field within the county and arguing that there's a housing need and I want to build on that site. That's why there's a planned process. So I understand the concerns. I know there's other people that are going to come in as well here. I just, obviously, we're going to have to try and get round to looking at the proposition and the reasons. And I think one thing I just want to raise at this point, members, to try and simplify it, and it's been a really good debate, and I can fully understand and appreciate the very real concerns here by local members and by the community. And it does, obviously, it seems to be coming down to the issue that on the one hand, you've got council-owned land that's allocated in your LDP with a site development brief where there's no real technical objections to building 110 houses here, versus a sort of some newer issues in relation to climate change, in relation to the potential loss of agricultural land, in terms of the potential wider cumulative impacts within Denbigh, in terms of other housing sites, etc. So I'm hearing all those really valid material planning points, but I think eventually we will have to hone in on what those mean and what evidence we've got potentially to go against your officer recommendation. So I'll leave it there for now, Chair, and let other people come in. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really useful, because I think, yeah, at some point we just need to come up with those, the people that have obviously proposed and seconded. We just need to get those reasons for refusal. We'll go to the speakers again if we just keep it as brief as we can without stifling any debates, but and any new points raised valid. I will bring in, I'm just going to bring in Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
This is just in response to, I think it was Angela, who said that the climate change was in 2019. It was adopted in our constitution in September 2020. So that's when we made that commitment, in September 2020. Diolch.
Okay, diolch fawr. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Ellis.
Diolch yn fawr, Gadeirydd. Dwi'n gweld y mater yma yn...
I see this matter has been very complex, dense one. Having heard what Councillor Rhys Thomas said and Councillor Brian Jones about the agricultural, ecological matters about this site, I've not heard an argument that contradicts that. So that's what I would like to know from officers. I'm not quite sure from whom, but it seems to be a very strong argument to me that land is good agricultural land, and there are also ecological matters that should be considered, climate change and so forth. Is there an argument against that? Because I have not heard it so far. Thank you.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. I've got the local member, I've got Cynghorydd Rhys Thomas, and I've got Cynghorydd Mary Davis. I'm just trying to figure out which order you need to speak in. I'll bring in the local member, Glenn. You come in last, okay? Glenn, come in last. I'll bring in Rhys now, and then Mary. So Rhys first. You're on mute, Rhys.
I've taken my hand down, Chair.
Okay. Oh, okay. Mary, ti eisiau dod I mewn rwan?
Very grateful to you, Mr. Chairman. My questions about the procedures on page 48, item 2, historic details of this site. None. There is nothing, according to this, that's of importance. More than once, officers have drawn attention to two important things: local plan, that's of great importance, it seems, and also a document, a development summary document that's been picked up more than once. In terms of the procedure, I think what I'm saying is that this type of thing should be in the planning history to assist members. Also, and I with the send my thoughts to the highways officer, but we do have other officers within the department, and I feel that we should have gone after one of those officers to assist the committee in this instance, and also the ecological officer. It's so important in this context. The argument has been a strong one on that point, and why didn't we, you know, we can work from home now. There's no reason, you know, to ask them to come into RUTHIN, so there's no reason not to say now, you know, be on standby now, just in case we have a problem with the statements that you've made. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I know the highways officer was an unexpected one, and I have asked for another member to come, but they couldn't make it. But yeah, okay. So do officers want to come in on a couple of those things there?
Yes, Dilsha, thank you. Yeah, I think going back to Councillor Ellis's points that were raised there, the arguments against what we're hearing around the loss of agricultural land and any potential ecological impact. I suppose the facts that we've got here are that, as Lara had pointed out previously, when the site was adopted within the LDP, and when a site development brief was also adopted by the council, the issue of the loss of agricultural land was considered at that point. And therefore, whilst I appreciate it is still a consideration and it's still a material issue, the fact that it has already been looked at and deemed acceptable to allocate the land for housing highlights that we've considered that issue previously as a council. So that again, I suppose it follows in terms of the ecological impacts. Where a site is allocated within a local development plan, obviously there's quite a bit of scrutiny at that time on whether this site is suitable for that development, whether the principle makes it acceptable to be adopted. Now, I accept that these issues are still live, and clearly I think what we're hearing this morning is that the period of time that has elapsed between plan adoption and now, there's probably a lot more scrutiny, isn't there, on loss of agricultural land, the issue in Ukraine, etc. I can hear all those relevant issues, and I guess it's for members here today to sort of look at those in the round, and I guess from an officer perspective, you've got to accept the facts. It's allocated, it's had a site development brief, a lot of these issues have been assessed before, but it doesn't mean that you as members can't raise these very real issues that are live today. And this is where I think the chair's now going to want to come back and look at how we hone in on some of the reasons and the evidence and the documents that we can use to back up our arguments to defend any council decision on this. So I hope that answers Councillor Ellis's question on that. I might bring Paul Griffin in because he's not said anything on this really, and if he's feeling left out in relation to some of the points raised by Councillor Mary-Lloyd-Davis in terms of planning history. I wasn't quite fully sure on what that was.
I think on section 2 on page 48, I think you generally put in the reports if there's been a planning application on the site before. You've obviously put none down, but I think if you're maybe a lay person reading this, you might think that planning history would involve the fact that it's a site in the LDP and it's had a site development brief, and it's I think it's more of a technical thing moving forward into how the reports are written rather than anything specific.
No, I understand. Yeah, I mean, hoping from the debate today and from the main report, members were probably aware that it's an allocated site, etc. But yeah, planning history we tend to just put in if there has been sort of previous planning applications and refusals on the particular site. But I understand now Councillor Mary-Lloyd-Davis's point, and thank him for it. Gil?
Right, so got a couple of hands up again. Gwyneth, tisio dod in all on something you've already said?
Yeah, diolch yn fawr iawn. I was in two minds between proposing a deferral or opposing it today, but and I think we should oppose it. If it does get passed, I would like you to relook at the use of bricks. I think that's completely inappropriate for this area, and especially this historic area, if it does pass. And I personally have seen flooding coming, or water coming down from here to flood Lenton Pool. I've seen that and taken part in it. So, and an applicant can appeal. The residents, they can't appeal, and I would be very, very happy to defend our decision at appeal if we don't give permission. Deal.
Okay, deal. Councillor Bob Murray.
Yeah, have I put my thing on?
Yeah, you're on. You're on.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind and take councillors back a little bit to not long ago that we voted through the Alexandra project in Prestatyn on my ward. Same builders, which is very similar to this application, very, very similar. And just to say to Paul, you know, no consideration was taken at all into the massive complaints that we gave it being good agricultural land. And this wasn't on the LDP. The other two parts in Prestatyn were thrown out. This was taken out by the builders just before we redid the land, and it was submitted after. I'm just reminding the councillors what happened on that day. It's very similar.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Glenn Twingler.
Thank you again. Yeah, great debate. Thanks, everybody. Just to correct a few things. Firstly, the people numbers for PENDREF were quoted as on the books at 111. It's actually 126. Best use of land, I've heard a lot. That basically means cram more in. Just cram more houses in and make them as small as possible with less land. Denbighshire County Council is presently using land for wildflower meadows. I totally 100% support that. And then we go and dig up this agricultural land. I just don't get it. It was pointed out to the council before completion of sale of this land, which was only 2 or 3 weeks ago, probably, that this was graded agricultural land, and they still went ahead and sold it. We're talking about, you know, the LDP, and this was all back in 2012, remember, when all these things were written. You know, times have changed, things have changed, circumstances have changed, and the environment has changed. We've not mentioned yet the impact on the Welsh language at all. You know, this is a very high-speaking, Welsh-speaking area, and I heard somebody mention, I forget who, sorry, saying that, you know, it's not just people from Upper Denby that will be living here. Well, you know, over the last few years, we've got 350 being built on the North Wales Hospital site, planned to be built on the North Wales Hospital site. We got 110 on a site just along the road, which is what we're discussing today. We've had 170 built in Lower Denby over the last few years. You know, this is a, I don't know who you think from Denby, you know, how many people there are in Denby left to buy these houses. There certainly aren't. And, you know, once again, I'd just like to point out that once this graded agricultural land is built on, it is lost forever. Let's please bear that in mind. We will never get this back. Please, you know, please vote against this.
Thank you. Okay, so what we now need to do is we've obviously had a proposal to refuse. We've had a seconder to refuse. We had 2 reasons. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler sort of came up with a couple of other reasons there. Just reminding members, you do not need more than 1 reason for refusal, and often having more reasons for refusal doesn't mean it's better. What can be what are the actual valid planning considerations? So if we just focus on that now, if we try not to bring any new things into the discussion, because otherwise we'll start going round and round and round again. The reasons I've got written down, and I think there's too many at the moment, but we obviously had the over-intensification of the land, and the fact that the best and most versatile land was being used, which was grade 3A, and that it wasn't required, has been superseded by the fact that other housing has been built in Denby, most notably the North Wales Hospital, which wasn't in the LDP. The second reason was around the highways infrastructure in Denbigh, not just in and around the area, but also the whole town itself. Again, things that have happened since the LDP is the new evidence of people have said. The third reason, which again is something that's happened in the last couple of years, is the climate change one that we have obviously is part of our constitution. They're obviously the three main ones that have been raised. Obviously, Gwyneth Kenzie did mention the war in Ukraine and as well. But I think we've got those three reasons. Do people want to, again, just looking at those three reasons, what we want now is to actually come up with what people are happy to vote on. And then I'll come in with the legal officers and just check that that's what we want to vote on. Okay. So just on those reasons, if we can focus on those now. Councillor Peter Scott.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to agree with you, Chair, totally. Those are the three reasons I'd written down myself. Okay. Exactly the say where you read them out. So that would be my proposal.
Okay, Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
The highways officers haven't raised any objections, have they? So that weakens the case for us. If we went to appeal, the inspector would say, well, your highways officers haven't objected, so you don't have a leg to stand on. That's my concern. I do have highway concerns, but it's thinking about a possible appeal, which is why I'm saying the climate change, certainly, food security following this war in Ukraine, and future reorganisations of education in Denbigh. I think that's a valid one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously the highways haven't objected to it, but that is one that has come in from Councillor Mark. If I bring in officers, and then they can hopefully shed some more light on it for us.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's good that we're trying to just hone in and simplify things here in terms of the reasons for refusal. In my mind, and I think in liaison with our legal officer here, I think the issue around the loss of agricultural land is a valid material planning reason based on the fact that that there are other sites within Denbigh that have been used for housing. So I think we can park that one as a sort of dead cert in terms of going for a reason for refusal. The point raised there by Councillor Kensler around highway issues. We just had a public inquiry last week, actually, on a site in MELIDEN for housing. And whilst we as officers didn't raise any concerns in terms of highway impact, which is similar here, there was a lot of local people that did attend that public inquiry and spoke quite eloquently around their experience in a particular area. So I wouldn't necessarily want to put members off if they've got genuine highway concerns in the area. Impact on highway safety is a material planning consideration. So I just wanted to raise that, but it is always about an evidence base, and members would have to resolve that in their minds if they feel locally they've got an evidence base beyond what our technical highway officers have said to back that up and possibly be cross-examined in a planning appeal on those issues. But highways is a material consideration. The other one there that's been raised is around sort of climate change and the ecological emergency. Well, again, I think going back to Councillor Brian Jones's point earlier, that is a very live issue, and if members feel as though they want to have that on as a reason for refusal, I think we would have to accept that as a material planning consideration, and quite an important one currently. So I think, yeah, those three issues, loss of agricultural land, climate and ecological impacts, and highway safety are all material considerations.
Okay, Gwyneth. Yeah, just one sec, Mark.
Yeah, that's great.
Gwyneth has just mentioned those two things, so we just want to be clear that whether we can or should vote on those as well. I've obviously put those three. Peter's proposed those three, but Gwyneth did mention food security, war in Ukraine, and reorganisation of schools.
Yeah, I think the problem with, I think we'll word things technically from a planning perspective around loss of agricultural land, climate change and ecological, and highway safety. The other things that have been mentioned there around the war in Ukraine and potential high education reorganisation, not material considerations to this planning application. So that I'd be strongly advising members to steer away from mentioning anything in relation to that.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, the food security will come in with the loss of agricultural land anyway, so that's sort of covered. And yeah, we can't consider those. Okay. Right, Mark, what did you do?
Just a quick one, and obviously I respect Councillor Kensler hugely, more than I could ever say, but I don't think £25,000 can make this area safe enough, and I'm more than happy to walk down with any inspector if required and defend my position on that.
Okay, yeah, I think officers are happy with how we've got the highway.
Good.
Yeah. I think Gwyneth's happy. She's just concerned, obviously, that we've been down this road before with highways.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So that's fine. And officers those. Okay. Councillor Brian Jones, and then I'll bring in Peter Scott just as the proposer.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make the point. The cabinet decision in September 20 to sell the land, of which I was part of that discussion. It's already been mentioned in some shape or form. The picture has totally changed since September 2020 with the focus on the climate change agenda. And if this application is refused, I just want to acknowledge that I appreciate, I'm sure other members will as well, that there is a financial loss to the council here. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I understand that when I'm making my decision to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and Councillor Peter Scott.
Yeah, last one, Chair, as you said, the one with highways is item 4.1.43. Planning authorities must seek to reduce the level of speed of traffic in and around any new developments, including ensuring streets are designed to have a speed limit of 20 miles an hour or less, and this should be achieved through good design and layout. So that's, you can put that into item on highways, Chair. But the rest of the, yeah, I agree with the three proposals I've made are fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on this for members' clarity on what might happen here. Whilst I did say that highway safety is a material planning consideration, in any sort of planning appeal, an inspector will always say, well, could conditions or other highway agreements mitigate those potential highway impacts? So I think some of the things that have been raised there around, you know, could it be a roundabout? Could the entrance be altered, etc.? They will all be looked at. So I think that the physical infrastructure around the site, you know, we're quite strongly saying that could be conditioned. The wider highway implications of maybe more traffic within other areas of Denbigh, I think that's where local knowledge and local information could come in and provide that potential evidence. But I think we just need to be careful in terms of what Councillor Peter Scott had raised there, because there are physical
that bit,
that can be conditioned.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Chair.
Yeah, no, it's all right. We'll go back. Bob, Councillor Bob Murray, have you put your hand back up? You're on mute.
To warn councillors, in Prestatyn, the town took advice of a solicitor, and we had a long drawn out thing about R1 in Alexander Drive, and unless we had deep pockets, we had no chance of winning an appeal. So I'd just like to let members know that, but we did try. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to go to the vote in just a second. It's been proposed with those three conditions. Councillor Markin, can you just clarify that as you the seconder, you're happy with those three?
Could we be given the three reasons before we go to vote, Chair? Because the reason I just have one issue with this, as you well know. I want to see whether that has been accommodated or not, which will impact upon my vote today. Thank you.
Yeah, just Councillor Markin, you happy with those three reasons?
I am, but Councillor Butterfield did raise a good point, so I'd just like her to for that to be answered before I confirm, please, because I don't want to miss that out if needed.
Yeah, okay. Legal officer is going to come in now.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, in relation to the highways infrastructure reason, is it right that the evidence is the local knowledge of the area, the insight there, and that's the driving force for that reason? Is that right?
Yeah, that's okay by me. Thank you, proposer.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And then just on the Councillor Butterfield, it's that, I mean, I mentioned it when I was going through my 3 reasons. It's the intensification of land and the use of it. So how is that one sort of going to be phrased?
Yeah, I mean, again, if members are looking to add a sort of 4th reason for refusal here, which is around over intensification, visual impact, density, etc., it's a material planning consideration. What officers will be clear is you know, defending that when it's an allocated site with an adopted site development brief, where you've already heard from your strategic housing and planning policy officers around the overarching Welsh principle around most efficient use of these adopted sites for housing, taking Councillor Swingler's point that doesn't necessarily mean cram as many in as possible and make everyone's life hell in terms of people living in houses. It's a principle around, if you've got an allocated site, you need a level of density to make best use of it, so that housing then doesn't just sprout up anywhere within your county because you haven't met your needs. So it's just to temper that one, I think, Councillor Butterfield. I accept your point, but I think in terms of the density that's shown here, 110 dwellings, we as officers are quite clear that that's sort of meeting your policy and guidance in relation to this site. Thank you.
It's also something that always comes up. If it's not a reason for the refusal that the planning committee give, it's still, if it did go to appeal, it's something that individual members can still bring to an appeal. And I know that that's happened before, where it hasn't been an actual a reason that the planning committee has agreed on, but it is something that individual members or members of the public can certainly go to any appeal and put forward their views on different matters, and they will be heard by the inspector with validity as well. So hopefully that clears it up. It's not an easy decision. We've had a good debate. Hopefully we're clear now. So we've got the 3 reasons, which got the highways infrastructure, climate change, and it's the use of best and most versatile agricultural land. Obviously those will be enhanced a little bit and agreed with the local members. Just to put a little bit more meat on the bones, but obviously that's the basis of them. And obviously we've got this meeting, we've heard everyone speaking. So I think we can go to the vote. So we will go to the vote. This will be, if you vote for, it will be to vote to grant planning permission in accordance with officer recommendation. If you vote to abstain, that's obvious. And if you vote against, it is to go against officer's recommendation based on the 3 reasons for refusal given to you as a committee, proposed by Peter Scott and seconded by Councillor Mark Young. Okay, so we will go to the votes now. Councillor Joan Butterfield.
I'm against, reluctantly.
Yeah. Councillor Ellie Chard.
And I'm the same, against.
Thank you. Councillor Ann Davis.
Yn erbyn.
Diolch.
Against.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Ellis.
Yn erbyn.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Hughes.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
Against.
Councillor Tina Jones.
Against.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
Yn erbyn.
Against.
Councillor Christine Marston.
Against.
You don't sound well.
Sorry.
Councillor Bob Murray.
Against.
Councillor Mervyn Parry.
Against.
Councillor Pete Prendergast.
Against.
Councillor Peter Scott.
Against.
Councillor Tony Thomas.
Abstain.
Councillor Joe Welch. Against. Councillor Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn.
Yn erbyn.
Against.
Young.
Against.
Thank you. Okay, so we have nobody for, 1 abstain, and
16.
16. I know. I've just double checked.
Sorry.
Just double checking. And 16 against. Therefore, that application has been refused. Okay. We have got 2 more public speaker items. Glenn?
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
May I?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Just very quickly, thank you very much, everybody, for voting that way. Secondly, can we now, is there any way now we can prevent Castle Green from going on the land and carrying out any further works on that land until further notice?
That can be a discussion that can be had, outside this meeting, probably.
Thank you.
Speak to planning officers. That would be possibly, I don't know if it'd be an enforcement thing, but it'd probably be property officers. Yeah, we'll sort that out outside the meeting, Glenn. All right. We have got 2 more public speaker items, but I am aware of the fact it's 20:11. We started at 9:30. So if we try and just have a short break until 11:30 and then start again at 11:30, because we'll get through all 4 or 5 items we got left. Okay, thank you. So welcome back, everyone. We are moving on to agenda item 6. It's on page 67 of our reports. The ward is RUTHIN. The ward members are Cynghorydd LLYS, Councillor Bobby Feely, Councillor Hugh Hilditch Roberts. The application number is 02/2021/1179/PF. The proposal is the erection of 2 detached dwellings and associated works. The location is land at Parts Garden of LLYS, BRYN, GOODMAN, RUTHIN, LL 151EL. We have 1 public speaker on this item. It is a public speaker 4. It is Robert Jones, who is the agent. The officer recommendation is to grant. And when you are ready, Mr. Jones, you will have 3 minutes to address the committee, at which I will start timing as soon as you speak to us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, good morning. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present this proposal before you today. My name is Robert Jones and I represent the building plot. We're the agent for this application, acting on behalf of our client, Roberts Homes. I'm a qualified architect registered with the ARB and a member of the RIBA with over 16 years experience in the industry. Having led the design development, I'm well positioned to provide an overview of the design decisions made to date. In December 2021, an application was submitted to the LPA for the erection of 2 residential properties, including associated access to the rear of LLYS, BRYN, GOODMAN, following a positive pre-application in 2019. This proposal follows the approval of 2 residential properties to the rear of Pennant, BRYN, GOODMAN in January 2020. This proposal, which has subsequently included approval for an extension, is almost identical in respect to the siting, layout, scale, form, character, design, materials, and aspect. The precedent set by this application, following a similar approval at the Nook, BRYN, GOODMAN, shows Denbighshire County Council support for backland development in this location. The proposal before you today has been prepared in line with local planning policy and supplementary guidance and is supported by the LPA with a recommendation for approval. Interface distances have been respected and exceeded to adjoining properties to ensure that the proposal does not unacceptably affect the visual amenity of local residents. The interface with properties directly west of the site, Tinnaburlin and Havant Teg, formerly Tracery, is in excess of 32 metres, significantly exceeding the minimum requirements identified in the SPG. This condition is typical for 12 of the 14 properties adjoining the trunk road to the west of the site, Wynvecon, who have a west-east aspect, the only exception being Tinnaburlin and Havant Teg noted. Properties Lys-Helig, Brynner-Wellon and Pentir share a direct interface with Halvrin, while Coatmore shares an interface with the original property at LLYS. In each location, the easternmost property is elevated above the western, following the local topography, rising up BRYN, GOODMAN and beyond. This proposal is no exception, following an established aspect and orientation, while providing a natural extension to the build line of Halvrin. We would also like to draw members' attention to the short sections included within the officer's report, which accurately illustrates the proposed interface. This document also states that officers are of the opinion that the scheme is acceptable and would not result in unacceptable overlooking or overbearing impacts on these properties. Similarly, the application has received no objections from Denbighshire County Council's internal consultation process, highways being of note. We welcome the recommendation for approval and hope you can support this application. Thank you for your time.
Okay, many thanks. Okay, this was subject to a site visit as well. So again, just like last time, we'll go through anyone that wants to speak just purely on the site visit, and then we will open up the debate on other things after that. Okay, so Councillor Christine Marston.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, site visit took place last Friday. We looked at the geography and the topography of the site, the impact on surrounding neighbours. We appreciated the access onto BRYN GOODMAN. We explored the site and then we walked down to YSGOL. We entered a neighbour's garden to assess the impact on their sort of property. And then we also dropped onto the roundabout by Tesco's to establish the impact further away and on the skyline. So yeah, I do feel it was of benefit. It it certainly gave us a feel of the sort of environment and where it was situated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's very similar to what Christina said. That was it. It was a very large site. The trees had been removed. But yeah, the entrances was exactly the same as the other entrances on the road we were on. And we did look from another house, it's tracery, I think, up the site, and there was a hedge separating them from the site where the building's going. So yeah, a good site visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Cynghorau Ddemryswyn, you might.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yep. Yeah, just on the site visit then. Yeah.
As you're the last member to speak on the SAVLE, you can do site visit and then just go into your.
Okay, fine. Well, Councillor Christine Marston has and Peter Scott have already talked about the nature of the visit, the site visit. As I asked for the having the site visit, it was important for me and for the committee to see exactly what these two houses look like if they allowed planning here today. No, two questions were asked during the visit. That came from the Garden of Tracery or Havandeg. Question was asked about the status of the support wall in the back garden that supports the land where these developments will happen. The question was made by the officer, Paul Griffith, and hopefully I'll have an answer to that in due course. And also, there's a reference made to the fact that the planning permission has already been given for Pennant opposite. We're not talking about this application today, but there's some difference in the sense that both properties, there's none of them look directly into the back or the front of any other neighbouring property. So there's a bit of a difference in that respect. And with those words, I would like to say that after that, we came down then to have a look at the site from afar, as it were, from direction of the Briec roundabout. And looking back towards the site, you see that there is, I'm trying to compare here, I suppose it's quite similar to a child's smile, you know, who's started to lose their teeth, you know, whether those front teeth go first, there's some buildings and there's a gap and then there's some buildings. In the gap, there were some trees. Those trees were taken down before we had the site visit. I suppose, according to local history, there's some between 14 and possibly 20 more trees that have been taken down here previously. If you return back to the site, if these houses were to be built as in line with the plans, then they would be higher than Havandeg and Tina Berllan, and certainly the impact from the upper bedroom windows, the first floor of both houses and Havandeg, it would be very, very a strong impact because there's at least 3 windows that includes a lounge bedroom and a kitchen that directly face these 2 buildings. So I have concern about that's going to affect the privacy of Havandeg, especially, and in Berllan. there are other neighbouring houses as well. And when I expressed my interest, I know that these residents. One of the residents isn't objecting. They are on the higher part of BRYN GOODMAN above the site, but he also has concern about the maintenance of the hedge that separates both sites. The application, it doesn't sit comfortably with me. I must be honest with you, and my intention is to ask for you to object the application as it stands, because it is going to affect certainly the privacy of both houses that I referred to previously, Havandeg especially, and a bit less, but it's strongly the residents Tinnaberllan. The reason would be because of the effect on privacy of both of those homes, especially. It's a matter, a shame that these trees have been taken down. If the trees were still there, it's possible that I wouldn't, I wouldn't be able to use that reason of loss of privacy, because they certainly would have protected the privacy of these sites, and that's a matter of concern for me that this has happened in advance of today. Also, I have concern the fact that looking from afar, that the skyline from afar is going to change. Where previously there were trees, there will be two houses, and the roof will be seen. Both roofs will be obvious in the main, and that's going to affect the rest of the residents of the town as they view this site from afar. I don't see that it's exactly the same as the previous one application, at least in Pennant. Those two houses, they don't look over towards the back of any of the houses directly, and they don't overlook anybody, and it doesn't affect the privacy to the degrees that this one would do. I understand that it's within the LDP, local development plan. It would have to be, because it's in the town centre. It'd be difficult for it not to be in the LDP. It certainly is in the middle of the town itself, and I wouldn't see that that in itself is enough of a reason to not refuse the application. Hopefully the answer will come that these houses are 21 meters at least away from the house, this site. It's more than that in both cases. I accept that, but I think we need to remember that is just a guidance, that it's not in itself a rule in itself that's been established. We shouldn't be afraid that the threat of going to appeal is a reason for us to take action contrary to what we feel that it's right at the time. We've seen this threat made already in a discussion this morning, and it's a pressure, unnecessary pressure on local members, especially who have fair play, are trying to do their best to represent local people. And that's exactly what my intention is here this morning, is to share concern of residents, and having been to the site and having seen it, I can concur with what they've said. It's a matter, of course, for the committee whether you agree with me or not. If you were to go and try and if you were to pass it, I would kindly ask for you to place conditions there that there's a screen of trees being replaced where trees previously were, in order to protect the privacy of both these houses.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, that was a proposal to refuse the application on privacy and overlooking grounds. Before I bring the officers in, do we have a seconder for that? If anyone wants to unmute and speak, because I can't see everyone. So
yeah, Nailio.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second. Thank you, Gwyneth.
And obviously, Emilis did mention a condition if it were to be approved. So that's fine. I'll bring in the other local members before officers. So Councillor Bobby Feely, I can see your hands up.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just make a quick comment before, nothing to do with the planning application, on how difficult the link up has been today. Certainly for me, I don't know whether it has been for everybody else, but the contributions that people have made, almost all of them have been disrupted by poor connectivity. I don't know whether I'm coming across clearly now. If I am, I'll continue on the planning application. If not, I'll turn my video off. So can you let me know?
Yeah, you're fine. We can hear you. And
are you okay?
We in the chamber heard
okay.
the first item. Okay, so
okay, all right. It's just unfortunate then, perhaps. So I'm coming. I'm sort of here to support MRIS, and I've obviously got points relating to my knowledge of the area, which I obviously have a very good knowledge of the area. And BRYN GOODMAN, it is the one road in the entire town that is in fact large houses on large plots. Nearly all of them have got, it's the only road I would say in RUTHIN that has a road of large houses and large plots, and quite desirable. The proposed houses will be large houses, but they will be on small plots. And instead of one house, there will be three, where once upon a time there was only one. It seems also illogical that the houses proposed are facing downwards across the back of gardens, looking into the windows of the houses in front. Particularly, I would mention tracery or in terms of that, which we looked at the site committee, and we will look, or the houses, should I say, will look down not only into their garden, but into their living room and their bedroom. You know, maybe this plot would have been better for just one bungalow, I don't know. The other points I would like to make, the road is unadopted and in extremely poor condition, and the constant heavy construction vehicles and extra traffic from building the new houses makes for a very sort of unpleasant sort of time for the people who live there already, and it could at the end of the day, it could make the road almost unusable. Access to the properties has been made by splitting the current driveway to YSGOL, and the fencing that has been used to do this looks, at the moment, I know it's early days, but it looks ugly and stark. The other point I need to make in terms of future planning, perhaps, and what our planning office can do about it, I don't know, but the proposed site was tree covered. It was good flora and fauna. It was area for wildlife. It was, you know, it was completely cleared. Before the developer came into planning to ask for planning permission, the site was entirely cleared into a muddy bog. So all those trees, not trees with preservation orders, just trees, you know, nice woodland, was cleared completely. So no chance to preserve it, and only has left just a few scanty trees. It's heavy sandy soil, and the drainage should not be allowed to run off to the gardens below, because as Emrys pointed out, the wall that's been built in one of the gardens, in Tracery's garden, certainly hasn't been built to combat water running down into the garden via that wall. This is a constant, if this constant development of BRYN GOODMAN properties continues, because we've had two already, this is the third, the character of the road will in fact be changed forever, and it won't be the BRYN GOODMAN that we have all known of old. And when planning turned it down in 1988, it said in doing so that it could set an undesirable precedent to develop other properties in that road. and therefore they turned it down. I appreciate backland development rule has now been smashed by the Welsh government, so there's not probably a lot we can do about that. But I do think it is quite disappointing that this road is being changed into, it's almost being changed to be made, if it happens to many more, it could be completely changed forever, this road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, Councillor Hugh Hilditch Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Dowell. I'll try not to repeat what Bobby and Emrys have said, because everything they've raised are very, very valid. But what I would like to do is take members to page 81 of their papers, please, if you would like to have a look, where you'll see the map there where the two houses, and if you look at the difference in the size to the other house, which is the original plot, is actually that the one house on one plot is actually bigger than two houses put together. So that gives you, you know, the clear indication that we're looking about how many sardines we can get into a tin here. And further to strengthen Bobby's argument is that actually these houses look directly on the same eye line, because the houses below are set below into the bedroom of the individuals. So, you know, I wouldn't want to be coming out the shower when these houses are built, because I might be greeted by somebody looking at me directly. So I just think that I don't think there's any opposition to having a property here that is in proportion and in character of the area, but this, I think, is just going over the top. So I just want to if I can, you know, for the committee, just to really bear in mind the houses' sizes are too big for the plot and in relation to the rest of the area. For those of you who don't know the area, they are very much character houses with big gardens, and you could almost quote it's like living in the country but within a town sort of area, if I were giving you a picture of where we're at. And this sort of gives me a bit of flavour of somebody just dropped the Brookside Close estate on their front gardens or the back garden. So I really have, you know, as Bobby says, if it was a sensible bungalow, I would have no issues. So just, yeah, it's not in keeping with the surrounding development. It's overdevelopment of the plot, I feel. And the dwellings all in Bryn Goodman should be facing the same way on that street, if you know what I mean. But these are facing into gardens. I don't think there's any other building in Bryn Goodman that faces into gardens like these will be. And I'm not too impressed with the size of the gardens either. We talked a lot about green space this morning in the Denbigh application, and I think this is not doing us too well. And I would be happy. Well, obviously, I wouldn't be able to because I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm sure Emrys would be happy to sit in an appeal if in this case and defend our stance. Diolch yn fawr.
Deal. Okay, I'll bring in members there, officers there. Obviously, yeah, sort of things that have been coming.
Chair, can I just come in very quickly before you bring the officers in, because there's one piece I left out.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, if I can also, yes, absolutely, Councillor Hilditch Roberts, I would be happy to defend any decision should it go contrary to the, or should it go to appeal after today's vote. I just refer you to page 97. It can be a little bit misleading. There is a question. Yeah, there's a question.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Right. Okay. Those levels can be misleading for two reasons. First of all, we were questioned on our site visits as to the accuracy of the levels in any case, and I know the officer made notes of that question from a local resident. But also, if you look at the site views from the first floor window on the third and fourth sketches, if you like, you can see trees appearing to be between the house and the houses affected. Those trees are in the far end of the site. There is nothing between the proposed property and Havandeg and the proposed property and Berllan. There aren't any tree barriers there. The trees shown are up near the furthest fence on the south side of the plot, if you like, just for clarification. So the question is, have we been able to confirm the accuracy of those levels? And the other question was about the status of the retaining wall at Havandeg.
Okay, do officers want to come in on points raised there?
Thank you, Chair. Borodar Pawb. Yeah, starting with the site levels, which were raised at the site meeting. Obviously, we've not been to site and surveyed them as such, but the information in front of you is considered to be broadly sufficiently accurate for you to make a decision on. I think that the diagrams there on page 97, as Councillor Wynn directed you to, that gives you a good feel as to the sort of the relationship between the properties and the different changes in height. Just for clarity, I mean, there's reference to the trees are shown there. I think as they are greyed out, I think they are trying to be shown as being in the background of that elevation, and that really, you know, we should just concentrate on the third and fourth ones and just look at the difference between the proposed dwelling and then the dwelling to the right, which is, I believe, the tracery. So that there's a sort of a feel for you on how those levels work. I think there's second question there was the status of the support wall, which we observed on the site visit as well. Well, I would just advise members that that's a legal requirement on the developer to ensure that they don't cause any damage to third-party land. So the developer would have to ensure that what work is undertaken within their site doesn't cause problems to another party. That sits outside the planning proposal in this instance. So the other issues that were raised there by the local members, as I sort of tried to make a note on it, were the impact on privacy, the loss of residential amenity to the dwellings to below, so that's the tracery in particular. Well, as the report says, and we observed on the site panel, there is sufficient distance there. We note its guidance. The minimum distance is 21 metres, where it's wind direct window to window. I think in this instance we've got more than 21 metres, and I think if you look at the diagrams on page 97, you get a feel for how the change in level would also put those windows looking over the top as opposed to overlooking the dwelling itself directly. In officer's opinion, we think it would be difficult to sustain a refusal on loss of privacy, given the distances involved, given the level changes. Further, and as Councillor Wynn also suggested, if the trees hadn't gone and that would help to screen the site, then there may not be such a strong objection. Well, I direct members towards the suggested conditions at the back of the report, and we've got a requirement there for a landscaping plan. So, you know, if members were minded to grant, there's obviously room there to sort of bolster a note to applicant to say part of the landscaping plan should be showing us how you're going to improve screening of the site if members feel that would be sufficient to overcome their objections to the residential amenity situation. So moving on, I think with a comment from Councillor Hilditch, who referred to the character of the area. Obviously, people are focusing on the character of the road itself, BRYN GOODMAN. But I think if you look at the page 69 and the map there, you get a bigger feel for the area within which it sits. Yes, its address point would be BRYN GOODMAN, but it also sits in between BRYN GOODMAN and former council houses to the south of the site. So I think if you look at page 69 of the report, you can see how two dwellings there would actually continue the line of dwellings along RHYL. There'd be maybe some kind of sort of a transition between the development character in that location and the development character of BRYN GOODMAN. Regarding access, I note Councillor Feely's comments on the status of the road. I think what we have to look at is that you know, again, contractors have got to, you know, show consideration to not damage a road. It's different when it's a highway adopted, but in this instance, unadopted road, this concern has already been tested, appeal further up, and the inspector at that time said that the impact on an unadopted road of a development of this scale is not significant to justify a refusal. So again, I do note members of the public concern on that, but I think in terms of planning and the state of the road, it's not a larger, there's not a strong ground there to resist the application on. Councillor Hilditch also refers to the dwellings being too big for the plot and overdevelopment. Well, again, we've got a policy that says it should be developed at 35 dwellings per hectare unless the character of the area suggests differently. So obviously there's room there to argue. If we were building at 35, I think this site should accommodate 4 dwellings. We're looking at 2 dwellings, so we're at about 16 dwellings thereabouts per hectare on this. I think members have to familiarise themselves with that map on 69 again, about yes, as you go further up BRYN GOODMAN, they're large dwellings in large plots, but also immediately you've got not dissimilarly sized plots in the immediate vicinity. So again, to argue it's overdevelopment versus the character of the area, I think that's going to be quite difficult, especially when the site isn't that visible. There are sight lines of it from down by the Briac roundabout, but again, they're not going to be prominent within a street scene, so I don't think it would affect the sense of character of the area. And I think I've covered most of the points there. So if I've missed anything, please shout up and I'll try and address them. But otherwise, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. I'll just bring both local members of their hands up, so probably just want to come back on a point. So Councillor Bobby Feely.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've heard today about hedges in Denbigh being removed or cut on a proposed site. I had a similar thing in Glasgow when houses were proposed to be built. The developer started doing things with the hedges before they were given planning. And now we have here, the site has been cleared of trees before the developer comes in for planning. So that's 3 experiences, if you like, and that's just me, and I'm not even on the planning committee. So I do think planning, you need to maybe take some sort of hold on what's happening to proposed sites without planning in terms of the trees and the hedges. I think there needs to be some thought given to how we prevent this happening, because it's not a very good advert, if you like, for planning when the hedges and trees are tampered with beforehand.
Okay, Councillor Hugh Hilditch, do you want to come in on any points there raised?
Yeah, a couple of things. It's nice to be back in planning. It's been a while, actually. I just want to pick up Paul on some of his words there, if I may. Paul used the words, this is a guideline and this is officer's opinion. Well, we've already got 3 different opinions in Bobby, myself and Emrys alone on this discussion. And you refer to the map and that it would be in line with the houses in RHYL, which you refer to, which is a row of terraced council houses in a cul-de-sac. Well, that's not within keeping with that area either, is it? If that's the argument. But if you look at the map of 69 that Paul's referred to, you can clearly see there's a small built-up area on the right-hand side of the map, but the rest of the houses are well spaced, as I explained, with a countryside feel. I do agree with you on the road. I don't think that argument will stack up because it has failed in the past. But again, members, it is the opinion, and you've already had the opinion of 3 local members who know and live and breathe the area on a regular basis, and are of the opinion that this is not the right fit for this area. And I'm sorry, you can minute this. I wouldn't want to take a shower without closing the curtains in that area if those houses are built. And 20 meters, if it was as the crow flies and it was the same level, I would understand. But actually, they're going to be overbearing the properties below and looking directly into them. And it will stick out like a sore thumb from Briac roundabout, because we can see the edge of the house that's already there. So sorry to disagree with your opinion, Paul, but it's my opinion and my interpretations of the guidelines that I take that this is not suitable for planning.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kinsler.
Just un cwestiwn sydd gen i.
I've got just the one question. I'm following the papers on my laptop whilst looking at the iPad. And when you refer to pages, those pages, they're not down on the papers that I'm looking at. Is this something that you can look at in planning, please? Thank you.
Yeah, duly noted, Deal. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Ellis.
Mr. Gwyneth Ellis. Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for officers about parking spaces on these plans, because I believe that the standards say that there should be at least 3 parking spaces for each house and additional ones for visitors and so forth. And on top of that, turning space as well. For me, it doesn't look as if there's enough space on the plans. Is there a view on that, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Officers want to...
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Yeah, looking at the plans, looking at the response to the highway officer that was looked to this, there are no objections from our highway officer in terms of parking and turning space. And if you look at the site plan shown towards the front of the report on page 81, apologies to Councillor Kenseth if the numbers aren't showing up for her, but you can see where the area of parking and turning sitting in front of both the dwellings. To give you sort of a feel for the size of that, there's a small single-storey side element on both dwelling. That's bigger than a parking space. So you could see where you've got space there for 3 cars, I think, with turning space to manoeuvre within and out of the site. So from officer's point of view, we wouldn't have an objection, we don't have an objection on parking and turning grounds. Joel.
If I could just come back quickly on that. I mean, it would be nice to be able to see where these designated spaces are, because to my untrained eye, it really doesn't look like there should be 3 spaces for the occupants of the house. There should be an additional space for visitors. And on top of that, there should be manoeuvring space. And it doesn't look as if there are enough. So it would be really quite nice to actually see where those parking spaces and manoeuvring spaces are.
Do you want to come back on that, Paul, or is it just the actual total area that's
Well, as I say, the parking and turning area is the grey area to the front. Now, obviously, if Councillor Ellis is wishing that it should be marked out as parking spaces, that's obviously, she's feeling that there isn't sufficient information on the plans. As I say, from looking at the area, officers are very confident that there's sufficient parking to the front of that site for at least 3 dwellings, 3 cars. So again, we would just assert that the comments of the highway officer that there are no objections to this proposal on that basis, although I understand your point. Thank you.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Cynghorydd LLWYN, you got your hand up?
I've got a mic. Let's get on all this.
Could come back quickly again. Could I quickly mention the my co-councillor has referred to the orientation of the way the houses have been set out. But I refer you once again to page 97. Gwyneth, numbers on the bottom of the page must be. Page name 97, where the diagrams described by the officers. In terms of orientation, they're going to be looking to the west, where they'll see the lovely views of Mynydd and KYNSAL Forest above, the roof lines of roofline of the of Tracery and Havandeg. But that takes that you're standing in your bedroom and looking directly ahead. If you look down again, as Councillor Hilders has said already, and Bobby Feely, you'll be looking straight into the bedroom of Havandeg and into the living and kitchen of the same property, and further along into Tynner Berllan as well. So those sightlines aren't necessarily, they don't represent necessarily what's going to happen in real life. If there were an application in for a single-story property, possibly a bungalow, and orientated, you know, to the correct direction. Naturally towards BRYN GOODMAN. Possibly the objection would be such a strong one from myself, but at the moment we're looking at this application in front of us, which is going to have, in my view, have a detrimental effect, and the view of my co-councillors on the affect the privacy of two houses. Looking at the Helvin estate, looking at the grey diagrams there in the background, the estate, Helvin estate, you see the gable end of one house, and then you see the back of a one house. That's the end of the cul-de-sac. This house doesn't continue the pattern that's also been established in Helvin. Helvin is a totally separate estate, and it's one its position here, obviously, in that part of the town. And I don't think that's a strong argument in terms of continuing that build line. So that sounds the same. Therefore, so I wish for members to reject this application on the basis of affecting the privacy of nearby properties. Those are the two reasons, strongest reasons, that the only strong reason that I can offer on this. I'd be happy to receive any additional ones, but it's better to have one strong one than that we go after possibly ones that are more likely to be challenged.
I'll just bring in officers on those.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think we're hearing the debate here, and I know on Councillor Hugh Hilditch-Roberts in terms of opinion. I think from an officer perspective, we can only do what we can do in terms of the policies and the guidance that we've had. You've had a site visit here, so it's had a good assessment, and I agree. I think if local members feel as though, from their perspective, knowing the area, knowing the topography, knowing the orientation of properties in this location, and if they feel that these two properties, in terms of their siting, design, and impact, are having an unacceptable impact on residential amenity by way of overlooking or impact on privacy, it's a material planning reason you've got to refuse. Just coming back on the point that I think Councillor Feely made there around the removal of trees and hedges generally around the county. I mean, we do obviously have the protection sometimes with preservation orders on trees and certain hedgerows under the 1997 regulations. They are afforded protection. What more can we can do? Not much from a Denbighshire perspective. It'd be legislative if anything needed to change in terms of the removal of those unprotected trees and hedgerows around the county. And again, in terms of resources and enforcement and policing that, I'd just temper that in relation to how we would go about monitoring all of that if there was a lot more protection. But there is protection there on the most important. But I understand the position in terms of climate change, etc. It's a very live issue. I think we've had a really good debate on this, Chair. I'm understanding the concerns of the local members. I think we've got valid reasons for refusal in terms of the proposal and the seconder. I think it's impact on residential amenity by reason of siting, design, and potential loss of privacy. So I don't think we need to debate it too much more in relation to that, but I'm happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's clear the direction that obviously the local members are suggesting for reason for refusal. If we can, so we've got Councillor Bobby Feely. Do you want to come back in?
Just one sentence, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to emphasise before we move on, you move on to other applications. I just want to emphasise this road is quite the most unique area of housing in Ruthin. It is noted for its individual interesting houses in large plots with an unadopted road in poor condition. Residents are of the opinion keeping this poor condition prevents the intrusion from cars cutting through to Ruthin School at the top. It is a well-known road colloquially, it is known as Jumbo Hill. Please don't let decisions on doubling, trebling this plot and other plots ruin this unique part of Ruthin.
Thank you. That was a very long sentence, but it was a sentence. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
Yeah, mae gen I just un cwestiwn.
Yes, I have just one question. I've been, we know in Denbigh we have areas, conservation areas, so you have to have permission to remove trees. Is other areas, conservation areas in RUTHIN, and is this in a conservation area? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just bring in Councillor Brian Jones and then Officer.
Yeah, I've just realised there's a business opportunity coming out of this planning application. A picture of Councillor Hugh Roberts in the shower through his window. I think that would be a marketable asset to donate money to charity. But moving on very quickly, are the officers therefore saying to us that they agree with the points as put forward by the 3 local members, and that we should vote against this application? And is that how I've interpreted that? And if that is correct, where was the discussion prior to it arriving here this morning? I'm not sure. We've been on this one 45 minutes.
No, I don't think it was, Brian. I think what officers are saying is that it's a valid reason, that it's still they're still not. They still think it should be granted, but it is a valid material planning reason.
Right. But, obviously, I was recovering from the comments of Councillor Hilditch Roberts, so I didn't hear it properly. Right. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Paul Mead, do you want to come in on anything?
Yeah, just on that last point, I think obviously officers do start sensing the mood at planning committee in terms of the way things are going, and we obviously want to try and assist members as best we can, but we always bring you back round to the detailed reports that we write that take us quite a long amount of time in terms of assessment and negotiation with developers, and we go out on site ourselves and we look at it and we form an opinion and we base it on our policies and guidance. So yeah, in answer to Councillor Brian Jones, our clear recommendation is to grant, but we also sense that the local members have got some concerns here around impact on privacy. So I think we've got to do that. And I think in answer to the question from Councillor Kensler, this isn't a conservation area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, as we said, we'll go to the vote. It's very, very clear what the reasons for refusal are. You can obviously vote. So you'll be voting, if you're voting for this application, you'll be voting to grant it in accordance with officer recommendation. If you vote to abstain, that's obvious. If you vote against, you'll be voting against officer recommendation on the reasons put forward and proposed by Cynghorydd LLYS. So if we're all happy, we will go to the vote. So Councillor Joan Butterfield. I think you said 4, but could you just unmute just to be clear?
4.
4, thank you. Councillor Ellichard.
4.
Councillor Ann Davis. I didn't hear you, sorry, Anne. Okay. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Ellis.
Battle.
Abstain.
Yeah, abstain. Yep. Cynghorydd Alan Hughes.
Same, abstain.
Abstain. Okay, thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
I'll go against.
Thank you. Councillor Tina Jones.
Against.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
Yn erbyn.
Against.
Councillor Christine Marston.
4.
Councillor Bob Murray.
Against.
Councillor Mervyn Parry.
Against, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Pete Prendergast.
Against.
Councillor Peter Scott.
Against.
Councillor Tony Thomas.
4.
Councillor Julian Thompson Hill.
4.
Councillor Joe Welch. 4. Cynghorydd LLWYN.
Yn erbyn.
Against.
And Councillor Mark Young.
Against.
Okay, so we have 6 votes for, 2 abstain and 9 against. Therefore, that application has been refused against officer recommendation with the reasons for refusal given by the local member. Okay, we're moving on. Now we're going slightly out of order of the agenda. We're going on to agenda item 9. So thank you for everyone's patience. If you have just been tuning in for this item. So we are moving on to page 157 of our reports. The ward is RHYL South West. The ward members are Councillors Peter Prendergast and Councillor Pat Jones. Application number is 45/2021/0516/PF. The proposal is the change of use of land and ancillary buildings to form residential traveller site for 6 caravans with the existing dwelling KYNSAL house retained for owners/managers accommodation, including formation of internal pathways and parking, landscaping and associated works. The location is KYNSAL House, Vale Road, RHYL, LL18 2PG. And we do have some speakers on this item. We have just this one speaker against. The officer recommendation is to grant on this one. The public speaker against is a Mr. Scott Drummond. So when you are ready, Mr. Drummond, you will be able to speak to the committee for 3 minutes. I'll start the time whenever you start speaking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can confirm that these objections are about the site uses, and these concerns raised would be the same for any change of use having a similar impact. On behalf of some residents living around the site, these are some of our objections. There should be adequate turning space for large vehicles like fire engines, ambulances, bin lorries, etc. Looking at the proposed plan, the turning area is not suitable. The plan clearly shows that this is an over-intensification on this site. Access on and off the site on Vale Road is and will be a danger to both existing businesses and pedestrians alike. It is our opinion that the change of use of this land to a residential gypsy and traveller site in such close proximity to residential properties on the surrounding roads would give rise to the potential for greatly increased activity on site, which is in conflict with the criteria of the local development plan policy BSC10, which requires proposals for gypsies and traveller sites not to be detrimental to the amenity of occupiers of adjacent properties. It is our opinion, given the size and location of the proposed site, the size of caravans proposed, and including car parking together with other buildings and the number of residents proposed, this could all have an adverse impact on the health and well-being of the occupants, the same considerations that would be expected to be considered should an applicant wish to develop housing on this plot. This plan should be retrospective, as it has had 2 static caravans on site since 2019 with no planning permission. All hedges, shrubbery and trees that were in existence were removed by the owner, who also installed a dropped curb in Knowsley Avenue, again with no planning or council permission. A fence has since been installed, but the drop curb is still in situ. Since 2019, when the development was created, there has been no attempt to engage with the immediate community located around the site. Any attempt by some residents to engage in concerns as to the change of use on site has been ignored or challenged. Unfortunately, some residents have experienced antisocial behaviour, noise and light pollution due to ill-placed security lighting, large number of dogs constantly barking, 4x4s, pickup trucks arriving all times of the day and night. The applicant states that this is for his mother, but I can confirm and prove that there's been 2 empty static caravans on site for over 18 months, which would have been ample room. We all know this is for a business venture, not about family, as the application shows he called himself site manager and has done this on other sites previously. Thank you for the opportunity to express some of our many concerns today.
Thank you very much. Okay, as is the case with the first 2 items, this was subject to a site inspection panel meeting at 11:30 last Friday. So, Councillor Christine Marston, would you like to comment on that? If you've still got a voice left.
Yes, it's lasting just about. Yeah, we did the site visit to establish the setting and character of the area, the proximity of the neighbours and the access onto Vale Road and the adjacent cul-de-sac off Knowsley Avenue. So it was just to get a feel of the sort of area and what was currently in position and the sort of impact on the surroundings.
We've lost you, Christine, but I think it's more your technology than your voice. Do you want to turn your camera off? See if that makes a difference. You're also on mute now.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, it was just to get an idea of the setting and character of the area, the proximity of the neighbours, the access onto Vale Road, and the adjacent cul-de-sac off Knowsley Avenue, which is adjacent to the proposed site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got I can't see anyone else with a hand up or who was on the site visit, so we'll go to the local members first. So first of all, Councillor Pete Prendergast, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I would urge my fellow councillors on this planning committee to join me in objecting to this application and indeed refuse planning permission when it comes to the vote. The reasons for refusal will follow. I preference that this response is about the site and not the site users, and these concerns would be the same for any change of use that had a similar impact. Since 2019, all hedging and shrubbery was removed, a drop curb installed in order to gain entrance via Knowsley Avenue, a quiet cul-de-sac, 2 static caravans installed on the land via Knowsley Avenue, all without any form of planning permission from the local authority. Although the entrance on Knowsley Avenue now has 6-foot wood fencing and concrete posts in place, the drop curb remains in place, giving rise to concerns from residents. This entrance can be opened again in the future. To date, residents and businesses have all experienced antisocial behaviour and have still and are impacted by both noise and light pollution that arise from ill-placed security lighting. And of course, due to the total removal of the hedging and shrubbery, this has increased the impact on residents. I would like to propose the refusal of this application for the following reasons. The siting of 6 static caravans and the occupied house on site is clearly over-intensification of the site. The proposed layout of this site does not conform with the Model 2008 standards. That is to say, there should be adequate turning space to accommodate large vehicles, such as already mentioned, fire engines and ambulances. The plan, although it does show a turning area, this does not appear to be suitable for large vehicles. Given the location of this site and the over-intensification given earlier, access in and out of the site via Vale Road is both dangerous for the increase in usage to both traffic and pedestrians. The change of use of this land to a residential gypsy and traveller site in close proximity to residential properties would give rise to the potential for increased disturbance and activity in the area, which is in conflict, as has already been mentioned, with criteria 5 of the LDP policy number BSC 10, which requires proposals for gypsy and travel sites not to be detrimental to the immunity of occupiers of adjacent properties. Other planning policies that I believe relevant to objection on this site are Policy R05, the Welsh language and the social and cultural fabric of communities. Policy BSC 3, securing infrastructure contributions from the development. Policy BSC 11, recreation and open space. Policy VOE 5, conservation of natural resources. Policy ASA 3, parking standards. And in regard to technical advice, TAN 11, noise 1997, and TAN 12, design 2016. And I'd also just like to remind the committee, this application was fully opposed by RHYL Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's a proposal to refuse. Do we have a seconder for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ellie Chard, thank you. And we'll go through, obviously, I think there's going to be a few people want to speak on this item.
Yeah.
We'll go through the exact reasons in a bit more detail later. Councillor Pat Jones, are you here and do you want to speak on the item as the other local member?
Yes, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. As a resident who has lived in this area all my life, I know it very, very well. Sadly, since 2019, the local residents and businesses in the area have at times experienced noise obstructions of heavy vehicles, dogs barking day and night. I also find it difficult to understand how 2 static caravans can be in place since 2019 without planning permission. Trees and bushes ripped up without any thought of the distress or appearance or the effect it had on the local residents' lives. I voted against this application when it came to RHYL Town Council planning, as did all the councillors, for the reasons Councillor Pendergast has given. Can I ask all members to vote against this application for the sake of the residents and businesses in the area, and also for the health and well-being of the proposed residents of this totally unsuitable site? Thank you, Joe, for letting me speak.
No problem. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see who's got the hand up. Councillor Ellichard.
I second this proposal by Councillor P. Prendergast, but I've just got one question, because we know the youngsters are struggling to get their houses and paying bills and things, and my question is, if the application was granted, would the residents in KYNSAL Hall House have to pay a higher rate of council tax? I'm thoroughly against this proposal anyway, but that's just the question I thought I'd ask this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in full agreement with both the ward members and the reasons that they've given against this application. The site has been pillaged of the trees, the beautiful barrier of trees that were along there have disappeared. They disappeared a couple of years ago, and it was opposed, but nothing was done about it. It's made the site unsightly, and of course it's reduced the quality of life there, in that the birds were quite an attractive thing in that particular area. It is a residential area, and all the things that have happened has been detriment of this site, and it is in very, very close proximity to the residents living there. There are no trees to screen the site now. There are no birds that were particularly active in that area. The green area was removed without permission, and the site is quite unsuitable for this type of accommodation. This site is a residential site almost in our town centre. It's in striking distance of our town centre. It will diminish the lives of the residents in that area. There's no doubt about that. And I do believe we as a planning authority, I would urge you to vote against this. We as a planning authority shouldn't be granting any planning permission at all for anything without we're protecting the expectations of all the residents in any particular area. It is really a retrograde step that we give this planning permission. It has been used, this is a retrospective planning application. It has been used for, as they said, caravans in the past with no challenge, Chair. But if indeed this is unfortunate enough to go through, and I would urge members to vote against it, but if indeed it does, I have 2 conditions that I would like to put in place that I will give you after the vote or whenever it is required. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Christine Marston.
Thank you, Chair. A question and an observation. On the site visit, we did walk the sort of plot right to the rear boundary, and the applicant has planted trees on the inside of the plot along the sort of fence, sort of at the rear and to the west side, so RHYL side, the same side as the house. So there has been sort of planting, granted they're only small, but perhaps that's going some way to mitigate what has been taken down. And I appreciate they were very mature trees that have been taken down, but there has been planting along two sides as a form of screening. And my other question is to officers. Concern has been raised about lighting. Can that be controlled by a condition? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'll bring in officers now. I can see other people have got their hands up. Don't worry, you will get a chance to speak, but I'll bring in officers now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just starting from the top, I guess, really, in terms of Councillor Prendergast's concerns that have been raised there. I think I've noted down a few issues there, but obviously from an officer perspective, I'm here to give you a balanced judgment from the officer's side. We've written quite a detailed report for you and organised a site visit. So some sort of facts from our side, really, in relation to the proposed scheme. There has been an amendment made as part of the application process, and I think there was a bit of concern there raised around the spacing on the site. And whether it was sufficient. Well, sort of model standards we have to apply for the siting of caravans. They have been met. We liaise with our fire service on that, and the fire officer has come back with no objections in terms of the spacing on the site. We've also got no highway objections again on this site. There's been some issues raised there about unacceptable noise and disturbance, and again within your report you'll be able to read there that the North Wales Police have commented and explained that they've got no concerns. We've also had no reported noise complaints from our public protection officers to date. So again, I need to throw that in as a sort of balanced argument in terms of what officers are hearing, notwithstanding and fully respecting the concerns raised by local members, but clearly, you know, if we don't receive objections and the police aren't objecting to it, fire service aren't objecting to it, our hands are pretty tied in terms of how we write these reports for you. Also, the applicant is fully willing to comply with our policies in relation to open space contributions, because I think that was raised as well. We've not received any objections from any local businesses. I think there was 8 residential objections raised, and I think there was a question there about whether council tax is being paid. Yeah, clearly it will be in terms of the KYNSAL house. All Gypsy and Traveller sites, they have to pay council tax, rent, gas, electricity, measured, you know, in exactly the same way as any other residential dwellings. Questions then in relation to what can be controlled through condition, because again, I think what we've got to be careful here is that we can't get caught up too much in terms of what may have gone on previously, where there's a proposed landscaping scheme and a lighting scheme. So conditions can clearly control softening the impact of this development via a lighting scheme and a landscaping scheme. So I think members have got to be quite careful in terms of going for reasons for refusal on things that can be adequately conditioned to mitigate impacts. So I'd just urge members to make sure they've read all the report in terms of the responses that we've had from the technical consultees, North Wales Police, Fire Service, etc., and make sure you understand what can be conditioned and what can't. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was given some information that previously a change of use for this land from a local builder was refused. And can officers make comment on that? It's a little bit back in time. Local builder, they applied for a change of use for the land that I know used to be the donkey field. I used to go there feeding the donkeys with carrots and things like that. Always don't put your hands up, they'll bite your fingers off. But there was an application that went in for a change of use and it was refused. Is that correct?
Okay, I can come back on that. There's nothing in our recent planning history. We check our databases with every planning application to get any relevant planning history, and nothing's thrown up. I know in terms of the age of planning, it started in 1947. So unless Brian was feeding donkeys before then, I'm not too sure, but there's nothing thrown up on our planning history in terms of this site. Thank you.
Still feeding donkeys now. Well, it's a local builder, and apparently the local knowledge says that it was the change of use was refused. They wanted to build houses there. Local builder in the area, well known, and that is what was put to me, that a change of use has already been refused by Denbighshire. So it's not 1940.
It certainly wouldn't have been Denbighshire, Chair, because that would have shown up on our planning history. Obviously, Denbighshire came into existence 1996, so there's nothing that we've found on our databases on that. I think what you've got to focus on is the proposal before you. In any case, it's within the development boundary of RHYL, which means that housing development and other development is deemed acceptable. And therefore, you know, you've got to focus on what's proposed before you today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Joan Butterfield, do you want to come back on something?
I didn't know whether I should put my conditions, the two conditions that I would like including, or whether I should wait until after the vote, Chair.
I think you would put them forward now, because if
Okay.
if it did get accepted, then we would have to just decide whether we wanted those.
Okay, there are actually three. One of them, Chair, is that there are proper housings for the gas bottles that seem to be strewn across the site. The residents do fear that there is fire implication there because they're not in any protected site, and I believe that they should have a housing in and around the site for any gas bottles. That we should have a condition on the site that any electric cables that are strung as they are now across the site, that they are put into housings as they are on modern caravan sites, that they do have an electric contact and plug-in area for each caravan that might well be housed there, and certainly no cables strewn across the site as they are now, and that the drop curb that was installed by the site owner is reinstalled by the council to give some protection to the road area. Because if that doesn't happen, as soon as the site is, if that is opened, and the site is open there, and that area there where the drop curb is, the integrity of the building, of the build there, the drop curb area would soon disintegrate, because it was done not to any building regulations. It was just put in ad hoc. So those would be the three conditions that I would like to see happen in that on the site, should this application go forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Let's bring in, yeah, Paul Mead will come in on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there is obviously a number of conditions proposed within your report from page 203 onwards. The applicant has agreed to reinstall the drop curb, but we are making sure there's a condition on there ensuring that it's access from Vale Road only. Obviously, there's a landscaping scheme being proposed as well within the conditions, which would deal with anything in terms of additional screening of gas bottles and other things. And obviously the intention is for the development to connect to all the relevant utilities in the area, if granted, in terms of gas, electricity, etc. So I think we're adequately covering everything within our existing conditions that Councillor Butterfield has mentioned there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kay. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much. One thing, I was on the working party looking at sites for gypsy travellers. Is this part of that? I've heard reference to them, but by one or two members. Just wanted an explanation, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pete Prendergast, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's in regard to restrictions if this does go ahead. Paul's mentioned one or two, as has Councillor Butterfield, but there are other issues on here that, unfortunately, on behalf of the residents, I would want to insist that they're included as well. You know, for example, at no time, and I think it's been mentioned, that caravans, trailers and lorries will not be able to use Knowsley Avenue to enter or leave the site. That's including using cranes to lift a static caravan over the fencing. At no time should any person reside or stay in the caravans until all are connected to the services such as electric, water and waste, which currently the two static caravans are not. Greenery to be planted, not the little twigs that he's put in now, but it should be substantial grown trees so that in the shortest possible time, the screening would take effect. Construction work, if it goes ahead, to be only carried out during the hours 9 till 5 on a daily basis. And again, already mentioned, security light, which has been a serious issue since 2019, if it's going to be put up, should only be on the site, not outside the site into people's homes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come in on that with those, Paul?
Yeah, I think again going through the conditions, we have got quite a few of those covered. I think if it does go through, what we can do in accordance with, in liaison with Councillor Prendergast and any other of the local members there, we can fine tune some of the conditions that we've set out and make sure that the wording covers what's been said there. I think in terms of a construction condition and the timing of that's certainly something that we could add on. But we will make sure that the conditions, if it is granted, are agreed with the local members. And if needs be, we can bring them back to planning committee further down the line. But we would liaise with Councillor Prendergast on that. I think the other question that was briefly raised there around from Councillor Kensler, in terms of how does this sit in terms of our gypsy and traveller needs assessment. Well, obviously this is a private site for 6 pitches here, so it would clearly meet a need there for this particular family, and it would have a bearing then on the overall issue in terms of a gypsy and traveller need across the county. Because obviously if this wasn't allowed, hypothetically, if this was refused, technically, because the family is living currently in our area, that would add to our need to provide adequate sites for the gypsy and traveller community. So obviously if this was granted, this would satisfy the existing need for this family. So I hope that answers the question in relation to gypsy and traveller needs assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, we could get into a debate here about needs assessment and various other things, which you'll be reaching for your code of conduct book, Chair. Most definitely. There is a debate here to be had. Well done to Mr. Drummond, the speaker, on his presentation on behalf of the residents. But the debate we could have here is what you've got at the moment. You've got a application on the table. It's retrospective. And what is there today, it's there. If you refuse this application, not a lot changes really, other than Denbighshire do have a slight lever if anything starts to happen a bit untoward in any respect. So that's a good thing to have that, and to consider, members of this committee, that if you do refuse this application, nothing really changes. The applicant can still be there, he can still carry on doing what he's doing, it can be sort of monitored, looked at, and when you take into account everything else that's happening in the world, it puts it into perspective. Nothing's been mentioned, it's not planning this. I've been around local estate agents, had a couple of conversations. If it's past 20Ks about the figure of what will happen to the house prices in Westfield Road, as an example, and the value of the site, the actual value of this site, if the planning permission is granted, does jump up somewhat. And that brings into question, whereas we have what we have today with this site, and I personally haven't got a problem with the applicant. I did declare that at the beginning of the meeting. When the time comes when he moves that site on, which will happen because time immemorial will dictate that, then what could we end up with? Appreciate it's not planning, but we could end up, and if you Google around the country at showman sites, etc., it doesn't look sometimes on the good side. So I would ask members of this committee to think about voting against this, and then we can control it from there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, then duly noted, and obviously thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, as you are aware that they're not planning reasons; they're just things that you want to obviously highlight. But Councillor Barry Mellor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to put something straight that Councillor Kensler had said, that she sat in the task and finish group for the Egyptian traveller sites, and that they were looking at sites. I was chair of the task and finish group. At no time were we looking at any sites. The task and finish group was just set up to look at the needs assessment for the Welsh Government, which has to be done every 5 years. So we wasn't looking at any sites. This has got nothing to do with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Mellor has said there, while he might say his group and the group he was chairing were told at every meeting that they weren't looking at sites, clearly there was already one in RHYL, in inverted commas, and actually at the south end of the council, Denbighshire, or down that way, there's another site. So yeah, a bit off the mark there. If he didn't know, he must have had his blinkers on.
Okay, I think we're slightly veering away from this individual application, but I do take on people's points. We have got officers just going to come back in. We have obviously got the proposal and things, so we'll just have officers come in and see where we're going.
Yeah, I think we do have a proposal, and we've got some reasons there. We've also got a set of conditions if it does go the other way. We'll just try and focus on the proposition to refuse and some of the reasons given there. I think going back to Councillor Prendergast's initial comments, he'd used a few issues there. One was over intensification in the use of the site. I think we've got that one down as a potential reason for refusal. Concerns about the impact on highway safety with the access Vale Road. Concerns about an unacceptable impact on neighbours by reason of increased noise and disturbance. I don't know whether Councillor Prendergast wants to sort of refine the issue around not enough turning space, because we do obviously have had comments from our highway engineers and the fire service that they're meeting the model standards here in terms of the space around the caravans. So that could be one that you might want to consider again. But I think I've got over intensification of use, highway safety, and unacceptable impact on neighbours. So they're the three reasons given. I think what again, just to counter that and going back to the officer's report, which is quite long and detailed, you've got a policy within your local development plan around the provision of gypsy and traveller sites. It has a number of criteria within it. We as officers have consulted with a number of specialists in this area, certainly with local police and others. We're considering that the criteria in your policy is met. It's in a sustainable location. It can be controlled through conditions to minimise impact on neighbours. And therefore we've suggested those conditions, and we'd be willing to go further than that and agree further conditions with the local members if necessary. But I just think you need to be clear that you've got to stick to the material planning issues. The officer report is very, very clear in terms of your compliance with your policy on gypsy and traveller sites. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Pete Prendergast, do you want to just be really, really clear on the reasons? Again, you only need one reason. You don't need to have a number of them, and it's just the strong ones that we would obviously suggest putting forward. So if you want to come in and say which ones you want to go with.
Yeah, quite happy with the three reasons that Paul has reiterated. That is fine. I'm not happy about the one in regard to the turning space, etc. In my opinion, I don't think it's big enough, but I take on board Paul's experience and knowledge that perhaps that wouldn't stand up. In regard to detrimental to the immunity of the occupiers and residents, I think that's a pretty strong one anyway. And as for overseeing or managing what happens on the site, well, since 2019, nothing of the kind has happened at all. So I have serious concerns if it is actually voted through to go ahead at how we're going to manage that. But that's something we'll have to cross if it gets permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And the seconder was Councillor Ellichard. Are you happy with those three reasons as seconder?
Totally.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're all happy, so we can go to the vote on this one. Okay, so again, this will be for the voting on this one. It will be to vote for. You'll be voting for to grant the application with the conditions as is, but also the conditions will go to the local members just to be clarified. Abstain or voting against, and if you vote against, that's against officer recommendation on the three items that have been discussed by ourselves. Okay. Over intensification of site, concerns of highway safety and impacts on neighbours, are the sort of three headlines on the three reasons. Okay, so going to the vote, Councillor Joan Butterfield. You need to unmute, Joan. Sorry, didn't hear you.
Sorry, Chair. Against.
Thank you. Councillor Ellichard.
Against.
Davis. No. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Ellis.
Derbyn.
Against.
Councillor Alan Hughes.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
Against.
Councillor Tina Jones.
Against.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
Matar.
Abstain.
Councillor Christine Marston.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Murray.
Against.
Councillor Mervyn Parry.
Against.
Councillor Pete Prendergast.
Against.
Councillor Peter Scott.
Against.
Councillor Tony Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Julian Thompson Hill.
Against.
Councillor Joe Welch. For. Cynghorydd LLYS.
Derbyn.
Against.
And Councillor Mark Young.
Abstain.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 2 votes for, 2 abstain, and
13
against. Thank you, Peter Scott. So therefore, that application has been refused against officer recommendation with the reasons given. Okay, I appreciate it's nearly 1 o'clock, but I do think the next 3 items, I don't think they're going to be that long. So if we're
Chair, I'm going to have to leave the meeting in 5 minutes, so I'm going to leave the meeting now. I have another meeting at 12:30.
Okay, thank you.
I'm afraid, Chair, I'm in the same boat, although it's a different meeting, obviously.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for letting us know. I think.
And I'm the same, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to leave.
Hopefully we're going to have enough left. I don't think we're going to be more than about.
Yeah.
We're going to be more than sort of 15, 20 minutes. Obviously, we may be, but I don't think we will be. So if we can stay on as long as possible, that will be good. I think we're still quorate, so that's fine. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 7, page 105. Ward LLANARMON and Llandegla. Ward members Councillor Martin Holland. The application is 15/2021/0681/PF. The proposal is the erection of a proposed extension to provide an annex accommodation. The location is GRAIANRHYD farmhouse, LLANARMON and Mould. The officer's recommendation is to grant. There's no public speakers on this. There is some information on the late informations sheet. I think, yes, some additional 3D visualizations, which are actually quite useful for us to have a look at on the late sheets that you've had. Councillor Martin Holland, I think you are. I certainly saw you at break time. If you're still with us, yep, you are there. Okay, do you want to come in on this one, Councillor Holland?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I have sat through for the last 2 or 3 hours or so of the meeting, so I think this is probably the least controversial item on your agenda, hopefully today. I'm proposing that we support this application. It is an annex. It's being built to accommodate family members who will be able to look after an older relative, let's put it that way. The actual application has been amended from the first application on officer's advice to slightly reduce the size of the particular dwelling. It actually doesn't overlook any other properties. It's in the community of GRAIANRHYD, and it is actually on the outskirts of the village. And as I say, there are no immediate neighbours, so there will be no impact. Also, it's not within the area of outstanding natural beauty because roughly opposite this site, up in on the hillside opposite, is a quarry. So as you can see, it is a small community. And I would ask that you support this. It is slightly different. It is slightly different to the property that's already there, but this is nothing new. And they are using wood as a finish, which is a natural finish, and it should therefore fit in with the surrounding area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
Second, if you want. Sorry. Okay.
Right. So I've seen Councillor Christine Marston's hand was up. Okay. Any other speakers on this item? Okay, so we'll go to the vote on this one. If I miss your name out, hopefully I won't, but if I say a name, it's because I know a few people have left. Oh yeah, good point, yes. Yes, that we can't. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, Councillor Martin Holland isn't allowed to propose it because he's not a member of the committee.
Hi, Nick.
So thank you for spotting that. I was being a bit hasty there.
Yeah, my apologies, Mr. Chairman. I got carried away.
Mike and Nick, I did it.
Okay.
Christine, are you happy to second it still, Councillor Martin? Thank you. Happy, Mr. Dillon? Yep. Perfect. Yeah, no, that was good. Thanks. Okay, so going to the vote, I think Councillor Butterfield left. Councillor Ellie Chard?
Grant.
So that's for, oh, sorry, yeah. So it's for 4 is for granting, abstain is for abstaining, and against officer recommendation. So you are for grant. Okay, so that's 4. Thank you. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Ellis.
Obliged.
Councillor Alan Hughes. Councillor Alan Hughes, sorry, I didn't hear you. Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones. Councillor Tina Jones. Councillor Gwyneth Kensler.
Obliged.
Councillor Christine Marston. You. Councillor Bob Murray. Councillor Mervyn Parry. Councillor Pete Prendergast. Councillor Peter Scott. Councillor Tony Thomas. Councillor Joe Welch 4. Cynghorydd LLWYN.
Obliged.
Councillor Mark.
Or
15. So that's 15 votes for, no abstain and no against. Therefore, that application has been granted in accordance with officer recommendation. Thank you.
I thank the committee for their support, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Agenda item number 8, page 135. The ward is Prestatyn MELIDEN. The ward member is Councillor Peter Evans. The application is 43/2021/1279/PF. The proposal is the alterations and extension to existing outbuilding to form an annex accommodation ancillary to existing dwelling and associated works. It's 1 LLWYN MESEN MELIDEN Prestatyn. The officer's recommendation is to grant. The reason this has come to committee is that it is Councillor Peter Evans's own application. He obviously hasn't been present at the meeting, so we don't need to kick him out of the meeting because he's at a different meeting this morning. Anyone got any comments on this one, as the local member is not here?
yeah,
Yep.
Mervyn Parry. Looks a fairly simple, straightforward annex to the building. I'd like to propose this application, please.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Bob Murray. So again, we will go to the votes on this one. It will be 4 to grant in accordance with officer recommendation, abstain or against to go against officer recommendation. So Councillor Ellichard.
4.
Thank you. Cynghorydd Gwyneth Ellis.
Obliged.
Councillor Alan Hughes.
4.
Councillor Brian Jones.
4.
Councillor Tina Jones.
4.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
Obliged.
Councillor Christine Marston.
4.
Councillor Bob Murray.
4.
Councillor Mervyn Parry.
4.
Councillor Prendergast.
4.
Councillor Peter Scott.
4.
Councillor Tony Thomas.
4.
Councillor Joe Welch. 4. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn.
Obliged.
4.
Mark Young.
4.
Same as last time. We've got 15 for, no abstain, no against. And we have just got one last agenda item, which is agenda item number 10. Just before I go into that, our legal officer, Tim Dillon, is his last planning meeting today. So just like to thank him for all his work since he's been with us on the committee. I know lots of you haven't actually met him in person because it's been since lockdown, but he has been fantastic to work with and you know, a good level head. And I think I was just exemplified in the last item where I was being a bit too hasty, and he spotted that Martin wasn't a member of planning committee. So thank you very much, Tim, for that. We obviously may have an agenda item, an agenda next month in April. There probably will still be a planning committee meeting, so it won't be quite the end of our work on planning. I know most meetings are cancelled in April, but it's reasonably likely that we will still have an April meeting. Agenda item number 10. What we need to do for this one is, if I just go through that, it's the HyNet Northwest Carbon Dioxide Pipeline, nationally significant infrastructure project. It's a pre-application consultation. It's because we're a neighbouring authority. It doesn't come into Denbighshire, but we're a neighbouring authority. There is a consultation that started on the 9th of February and it runs to the 22nd of March. This report seeks members' agreement not to submit formal observations in response to the pre-application consultation on behalf of the council. The reasons for this are explained below, with the council's suggested response contained within the resolution section. And the council's resolution section basically is to say, in italics on page 210, it says Denbighshire County Council, as neighbouring authority, does not wish to make any observations on the proposed carbon dioxide pipeline PEIR at this time. However, the council reserves the right to comment on the proposal at application stage and to make representations on other component parts of the HyNet Northwest project. Obviously, and then it says members are free to respond directly, and there's no works proposed within Denbighshire County Council administrative area. Has anyone got any comments on this? Any members got any comments? So, Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, without hogging it, I've been involved in these discussions at a regional level, and this is a snapshot into the future, and it will become
part of us eventually, and the benefits will be obvious, but obviously keep an eye on it, and we need to be in the consultation and further discussions. But long term, it's a solution to along the lines of green energy, most certainly.
Thank you. What we do need a vote on this. It doesn't have to be where I read out all your names, but so we will need somebody to propose that the bid in italics on page 210 is what we put forward as our response, and just need that seconded.
Can I vote? I propose? Yeah, I'll second then. Whatever. Yeah.
Councillor Mark Young proposed. Councillor Peter Scott seconded, and then I think we can do this by, if there's no dissenting. Unless there's any dissenting voices, then we will assume that has been approved. So I'll give you a few seconds to unmute if needed. Okay. Therefore, that has been sorted. So that is the application response, the consultation response that we will give, and that ends the meeting. Oh, it wasn't.
Good luck, Tim.
Well done.
Good luck, Tim. All the best. All the best, Tim.
Well done. All the best, Tim. Thank you for your service.